All right, good evening, everyone. We are reconvening and from closed session. I would like to make the following closed session disclosures. By a 4-0 vote with Councilmember Nguyen absent and abstaining, the City Council authorized and directed the City Attorney's Office to defend the cases of Elk Grove Police Officers Association versus the City of Elk Grove as identified by the case number listed on the City Council agenda. With that, I will adjourn the special meeting. It is 6 p.m. and I will now call to order the regular Elk Grove City Council meeting. Today is Wednesday, April the 14th. It is 6 p.m. Clerk. You're on mute.
Thank you. So, thank you, Mayor. Consistent with Executive Orders N-29-20 and N-35-20 issued by the Governor of the State of California, this meeting will be conducted by teleconference only. This meeting location will be the City Council chamber, but it will not be open to the public. This meeting of the Elk Grove City Council will be replayed on Metro Cable Channel 14 on Friday, April 16th at 1 p.m. and Sunday, April 18th at 9 a.m. It is also being closed captioned and will be webcast at sacmetrocable.tv. City Council meeting videos are also archived on the city's website at elkgrovecity.org. For members of the participating audience who may have personal electronic devices or when you're logging in via Zoom as one of our panelists, please place all your devices on silent or mute mode during the meeting when you are not speaking. Elk Grove City Council welcomes, appreciates, and encourages participation in the City Council meeting. City Council requests that you limit your presentation to 3 minutes per person so that all present will have time to participate. City Council reserves the right to reasonably limit the total time for public comment on any particular notice agenda item as it may deem necessary. Pursuant to resolution number 2010-24, no individual speaker concerning public comment may address the City Council for more than 3 minutes. In the Zoom environment, a speaker timer will be displayed counting down the 3-minute time. For callers connecting direct via telephone, they can utilize the raise hand feature by pressing *9, or for any of our attendees, there's the raise hand feature in the Zoom environment. And the city clerk will run a speaker timer. For those that are on the audio only, after those first 2 minutes pass, a single bell ding will sound to inform you 1 minute remains. Then when the total 3-minute time concludes, a series of bells will sound. And with that, Mayor, that will take us to the roll call. For the roll call and for all votes that we do in the teleconference environment, we do those verbally. So I'll be starting with the verbal roll call, starting with Councilmember Spies.
Present.
Councilmember Hume.
Here.
Councilmember Suen.
Here.
Vice Mayor Nguyen.
Here.
And Mayor Singh Allen.
Here. All right, we will move on to our next item, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, and leading us will be Councilmember Spies. Everyone please rise.
I guess I better unmute myself there. I wasn't ready for that. Hand over heart. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Next item, please.
It'll take us to section 2, approval of the agenda.
Move approval. Second.
With the motion and the second.
I'm sorry. I thought I had unmuted. I didn't unmute in time. I'm going to ask for consideration to move item 10.4 in front of 10.1 to provide courtesy to the CSD staff so they won't have to be sitting through all the rest of our items. So I'm asking to amend 10.4 in front of 10.1.
I'll accept that amendment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second with the amendment.
And with that amendment to hear 10.4 at the first of our regular agenda action items, I will start with the roll call vote, starting with Councilmember Spies.
Yes.
Councilmember Hume.
Aye.
Councilmember Suen.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Nguyen.
Aye.
And Mayor Singh Allen.
Aye.
We have an agenda before us.
All right, very good. Next item.
We have no closed session items under section 3 of the agenda, so that will take us on to section 4, our presentations and announcements, starting with item 4.1, which is the American Rescue Plan update from Congressman Ami Bera, representing the 7th Congressional District of California.
Welcome, Congressman Bera. Great to see you.
It's good to see all of you as well. It's raining out here in Washington, D.C. this evening. I just checked the Elk Grove temperature. It looks like it's a beautiful day out in Elk Grove. So wish I was at home, but obviously we're doing some things. We've got a couple slides, but before we jump into the slides, I just wanted to express, the strong support of the City Council and the residents of our community in Sacramento County. This past year, obviously, has been a tough year for everyone. The small business owners trying to get through things. I'm extremely empathetic to the families that have school-age children that may be trying to work remotely, but also school their kids and so forth. And I think we all feel the same way. The sooner we can put this pandemic in the rearview mirror, and the quicker we can try to, get our economy going again, get people back to work, get kids back in school, and start rebuilding, what is a brighter future, not just for Elk Grove, but also for our entire region. And the reason why I say those things is when we were thinking about the American Rescue Plan and putting this package together, it really was that in mind. And to the community residents, I want to commend your City Council and Mayor for certainly advocating for the resources necessary to try to put us in the best position to get shots in arms, get those vaccinations out there, put the pandemic behind us, but also the resources for the public schools to get kids back in the classroom. And that really was a driving component here. And the last one, as I mentioned earlier, is small business owners have been the ones that have been really hit hardest by this. We've done some things like the Paycheck Protection Act and so forth, but extending some of the emergency assistance loans through the Small Business Administration and so forth, not just to get through, hopefully, this last phase of the pandemic, but also to set us up, for the recovery. So I don't know if the clerk if my staff gave you a couple slides, and if we can go to that first slide. Great, and we can go to the next slide if you want. So if we look at this slide, one of the big things that I heard from all of you, as well as others in the region, was just the big impact on the loss of tax revenue and how that would impact the services that the residents received and so forth. So, we fought very hard going back to last May to get some relief directly to the cities. And in this case, Elk Grove, it's an estimated amount, but should receive close to $23 million to, help us both, again, put the pandemic behind us, but to recover from this pandemic. And, some of the eligible uses for, these dollars are obviously the public health crisis at hand. For those folks that really are on the front line, you can consider using it to provide hazard pay, obviously the lost revenue from the pandemic. You can also, as we think about the recovery, and you're thinking about some of those investments in infrastructure and so forth, water, sewer, broadband, we all now know the importance of having good access to broadband to both do telehealth, telemedicine business, but also for your kids to have good access to online education. And then also, we know that the nonprofits like the Food Bank and others that have really stepped up to help people, families, businesses through this. That's something that the city can consider using these funds for, as well as some of the special districts. Next slide, please. A couple things that they can't be used for. And again, this doesn't really apply to Elk Grove because you've been very fiscally responsible as a city, or we have been, but not to backfill pensions. And so how you should get the first 50% of this allocation no later than 60 days after the bill was signed, and that was March 11th. and then the remaining 50% no later than 12 months after the first payment. And then we've designed some flexibility in here, so the funds should be available through December 31st, 2024. Next slide. And thinking about, again, the other big component here, getting kids back into school. So the Elk Grove Unified School District, is going to get roughly $150 million based on a formula and the number of low-income kids, et cetera. But again, really to help rapidly get our kids back in the classroom in a safe way, get our teachers and their staff back in the classroom as well in the safest possible way. But also understanding we've got a lost year that we have to make up. Obviously a lot of folks have struggled to pay their rent, mortgages, et cetera. Some resources in there. We are in a pandemic, so again, extending resources to help folks get access and coverage under healthcare. And then, as we talked about, the small businesses. And then, one particular area was restaurants that truly have been hit hard by the pandemic. There are targeting smaller size restaurants, women-owned restaurants, minority and veteran-owned businesses. There's some targeted grants that would go in that direction. That's the last slide. And again, this has been a tough year. We've all worked together, and I'm proud to be your member of Congress, but also really proud about the partnership with the local electeds. And let's come out of this in a stronger position, more resilient. Our job is to try to help make sure we don't have to go through this again. And I am very optimistic if we're smart with how we use these resources as well as other potential resources for infrastructure. We will come out in a better place, and our future, both in Elk Grove and the region, can look very bright. So I'll stop with that, and I'm happy to take any questions that the mayor or the council members might have.
I'll save mine for last, so we'll just start off with Councilmember Soon.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Congressman Bear, it's great to see you. Thanks for staying up a little late to join us tonight. As you know, we've been hit pretty hard, but all the effects in our community happen at the local level. And but it's very difficult for us at the local level to, we don't have the tools, frankly, to be as much help as we'd like. So I'm extremely grateful for your leadership and your partnership and your representation for our area, going to bat for us and helping us. That 23 million. There's a lot of need out there, but 23 million is going to do a lot of good for our businesses and nonprofits and help with our infrastructure. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. And again, I know you all have been advocating going back to the early days of the pandemic, understanding the net impact it was going to have. And we tried to design this with enough flexibility so the federal government wasn't dictating how you use these resources, because I think we understand the local representatives, the local city council members and mayors, actually, you deal with it because you're in the supermarket. I deal with it sometimes when I'm at the Nugget and folks come up to me and are advocating, but you guys deal with it every day, and you're going to have the pulse of what's happening in the city. And, again, we want to give you some flexibility, and we're here to work with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Spies.
So Congressman Bear, I didn't have any questions, but I do want to thank you. We certainly appreciate your leadership in Washington, D.C. Very much appreciated. Thanks for looking out for us. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Councilmember Hume.
No questions. Good to see you virtually.
Good to see you, Pat.
Vice Mayor Nguyen.
I don't have any questions either. I do want to echo the Councilmember Soon's word. As somebody who runs a nonprofit and is on the ground working with these community members that are struggling, everything you said really hit home. And I mean, it was like you were speaking to the community there, making it very flexible is always good. A lot of community-based organizations are going to need the assistance so that we can get everybody back. But also the rental assistance, financial assistance is very crucial right now. So when I was listening to you talk about all the things that we can do with it, I was just agreeing, like, you are definitely speaking to somebody who advocates for everything that you said there. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And I echo a lot of the same comments. And I just want to thank you for being such a strong champion for our city. And I know that these votes weren't easy, and it took a lot of negotiation and a lot of criticism along the way. But you stepped up along with other colleagues throughout the country to really be the best stewards and best advocates for our working families who are really struggling. And of course, our small businesses who are just struggling. Councilmember Soon and I sit on the Economic Resiliency Task Force for our city, and we're also reviewing this as part of making some recommendations for our city to consider, and as well as the chamber with their Equity Task Force, to be mindful of how the monies get allocated, because the need is far greater, but we are so grateful for the funds that are coming to our city. And as a former school board trustee, I'm especially proud and grateful for the funds that are coming to the school district, because we do need to get our kids back to school to 5 days a week and recover some of that lost learning that has been horrible in this last year, and the mental health and all of the aspects that COVID has had an impact on our students. It is severe. So I know that these funds will be used wisely from the school district, and then as well as the city, because it's really, we want to make sure that we are responsible, but also being very transparent and accountable for how those funds are going to be allocated. But thank you for your leadership and your partnership and advocacy for our city.
Well, we'll thank all of you for the leadership through this tough year. Again, I feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, and let's get those shots in arms. Let's get through this, and let's come back stronger, more resilient, and in a better place. So thank you. I know you guys have a lot on your agenda. Be safe.
Do you think the governor can meet the June 15th deadline of the reopening of California so we can get normal?
That's my hope. The best way we can do that is, let's get the vaccinations out there. And there's a lot of resources in here for both vaccines, but also for that public health workforce that we need to get those shots in arms. So thank you, everyone. Be safe, and hope I'll be home soon. So
thank you.
Thanks.
Take care. Good night.
Take care.
Thank you. Next item, Jason.
We move to the next item. I'm just going to ask staff if they can help to give the status to District Director Gary Goodman. He's going to try driving for his presentation. But what we will be doing is moving on to item 4.2, which is the presentation by the Sacramento Yolo Mosquito and Vector Control District. And we'll see if we can get everything working here.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me and see me. Unfortunately, maybe you can see me, and hopefully the screen shows my presentation.
Everything's coming through. Looks great, and we'll see that it advances, but please proceed.
All right. Well, yeah, there's always a challenge with these. So I want to thank the mayor and the council for the annual invitation to come out and talk to you a little bit about mosquito control, what we're seeing for this upcoming season. Obviously, public health has taken a front seat with the pandemic, and we are a public health agency. While vectors are a little bit different, I think what we've really tried to understand is that we need to have innovative ideas as to how to proceed and be able to try to protect public health, not only now and in the future. And so I want to talk a little bit about the things that we're going to be doing for this upcoming season and what we anticipate for the Sacramento and Yolo Vector Control District. So hopefully it is, there we go. All right. So hopefully you can see the second slide.
Good. So please
perfect.
Proceed.
All right. So our mission, we are a public health agency, and our goal is to try to help provide safe, effective, economical mosquito and vector control. And what does that mean? I mean, part of that means clearly a disease aspect, making sure that we're trying to prevent disease transmission from vectors such as mosquitoes. The one that our biggest concern, obviously, is West Nile virus. Something that has been established here in California since 2003 and is not going to go away. We do have cases of West Nile virus every year, and so that's something that we want people to be aware of, and the things that they can do to try to help prevent that. The second aspect of it is, mosquitoes are also a nuisance and an economic issue. We want to make sure that when people are outside in the summertime, enjoying their backyard and the barbecues, those types of things, that they're not being inundated with mosquitoes to the point where they have to go inside. And so This can also be a significant economic issue in terms of property values and those types of things. And so our goal and our authority is under the California Health and Safety Code that gives us the authority to be able to try to go out, look for, and treat for mosquitoes. So what are we looking for? Well, there's some things that are very simple for us. In Sacramento and Yolo County, we're very diverse, a large agricultural aspect, especially in southern Sacramento County. And then we have residential. And so there are breeding sources all the way from rice fields and wetlands that breed mosquitoes, irrigation ditches, to more of the bigger challenges that we face are what are the things that are in your backyard? Because it's easy for us to see a wetland or a rice field. It's very difficult for us to be able to see behind your fence and all of those potential sources that may be, whether it be the bucket, the old tire that's in the corner, a coffee can, the potted plant that has the saucer in the bottom that just collects water. So these are all challenges, and this is why we try to reach out to the general public to see what they can do to try to help us, which is essentially trying to go around your yard once a week and look for and drain any potential standing water that might breed mosquitoes. Another big challenge that we face are, green swimming pools. And obviously in this pandemic, especially with high unemployment, we are starting to see folks that are not able to maintain their pool because, they've either lost their job or they're just don't have the funds available to be able to fix that. And so that's a big challenge. And it's always nice for us to be able to try to find these things. We do some aerial surveys sometimes to be able to spot green pools, but we also just rely on neighbors. If you have a green pool, we really don't care. We just want to come and treat it and make sure that it's not breeding mosquitoes and having an impact on the rest of the neighborhood. So we go through what we call an integrated mosquito management approach. The first is public information. We have a very aggressive advertising campaign, social media presence, those types of things to be able to try. And this last year has been a challenge because we typically do a lot of events, going out to the public, going to the Strauss Festival, going to various things in the neighborhoods, and we haven't been able to do that. And so we've tried to ramp up a bit more of our social media presence and our advertising budget to be able to try to reach out to folks in general. We've also had a very aggressive or active school program where we actually went to schools. Of course, that got suspended for the moment, and hopefully we'll be able to start that in the upcoming year. Then we have what we call a surveillance program, and essentially this is setting traps throughout the district, looking for various mosquito species and then testing those mosquitoes to see if they're carrying virus. And then if they are, then we're doing some level of mitigation control associated with that. Our biological control, we're located right here in Elk Grove. So folks that have driven by on Bond Road, you see all those ponds out there. We are not breeding mosquitoes in those ponds. We are breeding what we call mosquito fish right there in the middle of the screen. Very small fish that we plant in various sources, from green backyard swimming pools to wetlands, irrigation ditches, wherever they may thrive because they eat mosquito larvae, and that's the goal. And so we provide that free of charge. We probably have the largest mosquito fish breeding facility in the country, planting over 3,000 pounds of fish per year in just Sacramento and Yolo County. Then we have what we call ecological management. And this is, we have heavy equipment such as a dump truck and a backhoe, and we actually work with landowners to be able to try to minimize mosquito breeding on large properties. And we work with Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge, Cosumnes River Preserve, those types of large landowners that need our help and assistance in that. And then finally is our chemical control, our larviciding and adulticiding. And so when we look for and we find breeding sources, we have products that are specific to mosquito larvae. And so we'll put that out in those sources to be able to try to control. But then once we have adult mosquitoes, and specifically infected adult mosquitoes with West Nile, that's when we'll start to do adult mosquito control, and that anywhere from a backpack to a truck to even the airplane that goes over residential houses. So we've had a history of doing that. We don't do that every year. We only do it when we meet certain thresholds, when the virus activity is high enough to where we have potential transmission to the human population. But it is something that we do look at, or is part of our repertoire in terms of mosquito control. West Nile virus in California. This is the last few years, a history of what we've seen. So the last couple of years, we've seen just a little over 200 cases reported in California. The challenge associated with this is that typically most of the cases that get reported are a very serious form of the disease, from what we call neuroinvasive form, which usually requires hospitalization, could lead to paralysis, blindness, and of course death. And I want to make sure that people understand that this is a very serious, underreported disease. So for all of the reported neuroinvasive forms of the disease, CDC estimates there's anywhere from 30 to 70 cases that are not reported. So people that still have an impact from West Nile virus, they get sick and more flu-like symptoms, but they just never get diagnosed. It never gets tested for by the doctor. They just kind of stay home for a few days, they recover, and everything's there. So you're really talking about the potential number of cases, 6 to 15,000 Californians that are afflicted with some level of West Nile virus on an annual basis. So we want people to understand that it is a real threat, and it can be very serious, and there's simple measures that they can try to do to help protect themselves. So this is a map of Elk Grove specifically and the virus activity that we've had. So the red circles are positive mosquito samples that we collected last year, and then the triangles are positive dead birds that we've collected this past year. So you can see a small collection of areas right in the center of Elk Grove there. Not a lot of activity. We had a very mild year last year. However, this upcoming season, we are anticipating a much more busier season. Due to the fact that we're in a drought, and typically our data has shown that coming out of a drought year, lack of rainfall in the wintertime has actually led to an increase in West Nile virus activity. And so we're anticipating a busier season for 2021. Another concern I think that we've talked about in years past, we call these invasive mosquitoes, and this particular one, the yellow fever mosquito, or Aedes aegypti, is a very efficient vector of more exotic diseases like dengue, Zika, and chikungunya. And the challenge with these is that these are very difficult to detect. They're very small mosquitoes. They like to bite humans, and they like to be around houses and homes. And so the challenge that we face here is that these are, they find themselves in very cryptic sources. So those typical backyard sources where these particular mosquitoes like to breed. And that becomes a challenge for us because we can't see in everybody's backyard. And so we really rely on the public to let us know that they're being bothered by mosquitoes. Then we can come out and make sure of what species and type that they are. And so, the challenge that we've seen with these invasives is that they've started to come. Typically, these are mosquitoes that are endemic to South America, Central America, and Mexico, and they've started to become established in California. And we detected these species in Sacramento and Yolo County as early as just 2 years ago. So our first detection was in the Citrus Heights area. And then last year, we detected it in Arden Arcade, the Winters area, and a couple other smaller spots. And the challenge with this is that these mosquitoes don't just migrate or fly to these particular areas, they're actually brought by people. So they lay their eggs in these very small cryptic sources like flower pots and things like that. And then people move those things around. And so that's how they get established in the area. And obviously the concern for us is that we don't want this to be a widespread invasion of our particular area, because then we could have potential local transmission of those more exotic diseases. So again, just another slide of the very cryptic sources. These are actually photos of areas within Sacramento County that we have found these particular species of mosquitoes. And so anything from those buckets that you see that are filled with water to even bromeliad plants at the very bottom. Those things hold water, and these particular mosquitoes will breed in just that little bit of water. They've known to actually breed in just a bottle cap of water. And so this becomes the challenge for us, and why we want people to be aware that if you're being bitten by mosquitoes, give us a call. That's what we do. We'll come out, we'll take a look, we'll make sure and test for those mosquitoes and try to make sure that they're not the invasive species. So one thing that we are trying to look at is some more innovative control strategies, and specifically sterile insect technique. And so what happens here, it's a little different for us in terms of a mosquito control district, because our job is to be able to find and eliminate mosquito breeding sites. But here what happens is sterile insect technique is a process where they sterilize the males, and specifically only female mosquitoes bite. Male mosquitoes don't bite. They don't need a blood meal, so they just feed on nectar. And so if you can sterilize the males, then you release those sterilized males in a particular area, they'll mate with the females, the wild females, and then essentially the progeny is no good. And so there's been a lot of work done here in Fresno in California, down in Southern California, also processes in Florida and Texas, some of the Caribbean islands, And USDA has actually used this particular technique, sterile insect technique, to try to control screwworm and even medfly. So it's an established technique. It's just now new and innovative to be able to try to transfer this to mosquitoes. And so we're very excited about a possibility of a control method that doesn't use pesticides, which is a good option for us. And so we'll be looking at this moving forward if these particular species of mosquitoes get established here. So again, for us, we're looking at sterile insect technique and other control methods. We will continue to do our surveillance and other efforts, looking for other outreach opportunities. I think the council knows we buy repellent packets by the pallet, and we want it to be used. So if there are events that start to open up in the summertime, please contact us. We'll be more than happy to hand out repellent, give it free of charge. We want it to be used so that people are protecting themselves. It's one of the simple things that the public can do to try to help protect themselves from mosquitoes. And then again, encourage the public to report. If you're being bitten by mosquitoes, whether it be in the day or in the evening time, give us a call. This is exactly what we want to do. We want to make sure that we're protecting the public from vector-borne disease. And if they can, drain any standing water that are on their property, discarded those things that may hold water when their sprinklers go off, and take care of the issue. But for the most part, if you're being bothered, give us a call. That's what we do. And so you can get more information at our website, which is fightthebite.net. Or obviously give us a call. And clearly we're here locally right off of Bond Road. I've been here for quite some time, and really appreciate the council's invitation to talk and give it a little update as to what we do for vector control, what we're anticipating this year. And if you have any questions, more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Excellent presentation. I actually learned quite a bit there, like chikungunya. Never heard of that before. Real quick question. How do you get your message out outside of, coming before the council? How are you sharing this with the public?
Well, we have an active advertising campaign. So we do radio, television, social media ads. So we have a healthy budget to be able to try to do that. We've had a school program, obviously, where we actually would go out and do school assemblies. And so we're hoping to pick that back up in the fall when schools reopen. We were also very active with community events and efforts that way as well. But we have been doing a lot of presentations via Zoom to neighborhood associations and Rotary clubs and things like that. So
homeowners associations?
Yeah, we've done some homeowner associations. I'm more than happy to do that. We have folks that can get on the Zoom and give a much better presentation than what I give, a lot more informative and just to let people know. And for the most part, we've been trying to reach out to our listserv. We also use the media to try to do press releases and do stories with the media as well. Very
good. Let's see, council colleagues, I'll start with Council Member Soon. Any questions or comments?
Just a clarification, Gary, it's a great presentation, as the mayor said. I just want to make sure I heard you right. Did you say that the males are the only ones that bite? Or
no, the females are the only ones that bite. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, only the females bite.
Yeah, thank you.
They are biting to get the protein in your blood so that the protein can lay the eggs. So the males are really just no good except for flying around mating for females and feeding on nectar of plants. So
all you women need to stop laughing right now because I know what you're thinking and it's not true in the human species.
Oh, God.
I'm just hearing that the males are no good and all they do is fly around. That's what I'm hearing.
But if they're anything like a bee, they don't live after that, do they?
They live a little bit longer after mating, but yeah, their lifespan for the most part in the summertime is only about a few weeks. So, but they can get a lot done in that short period.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea, but in the end, it's the total cost of ownership is not good if you're a male mosquito or a male bee.
Correct.
Thank you, Gary.
Just went south real quick there. Councilmember Huber speaks. Anything to add to what Mr. Soon has mentioned?
No, just always good to hear from you, Gary. Thanks.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, I didn't have anything to add either, except that it's one of those things that people overlook, but it's really important to do because summertime's coming and nobody likes to get eaten by mosquitoes. So thank you.
And I'm always the first bit, so I'm going to go home and do my own inventory like tomorrow.
Great.
I have a quick question. Do you have literature in various languages as well too?
We do. We translate into a lot of different languages. Spanish, obviously, we have some material in Russian, Hmong, so we can reach out, and if there's something that we're missing, I'm more than happy to try to help facilitate that. So yes, we do outreach to in other languages.
Yeah, with the community events all, being canceled or whatnot, so I'm sure you're not able to do many tabling events to get the information out. I'd love to connect with you to get some of that literature so we can hand it out to some of our community members, especially if they're in language.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
great. Well, thank you. I don't have anything further to add other than the outreach, which you answered very well. So thank you. Great presentation. See
Thank
you
you
soon.
very much. Have
Thank
a great
you.
day.
You too. All right, with that, we will go on to our next item.
That next item will be item 4.3, which is a proclamation recognizing April as Donate Life Month. And Mayor and Council, just to give you a sense, we do have some representatives. I believe we have the Executive Director from Sierra Donor Services here, as long as some folks to receive the item, but we can proceed with how you wish on the proclamation.
Great. Actually, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Lindgren, would you like to read some of the whereases?
Certainly, and I'll put it up on the screen as well, too.
Thank you.
I think I can get there.
Perfect.
So for this is the City of Elk Grove proclamation for Donate Life Month, April 2021. Whereas nearly 110,000 Americans are currently on the organ donation waiting list, including over 21,000 Californians. And whereas 95% of Americans believe organ, eye, and tissue donation is the right thing to do, yet approximately 50% nationally and 37% in California are actually registered to become donors. And whereas Sierra Donor Services serves at the center of a dynamic, interconnected system that involves donor families, local hospitals, and transplant centers across Northern California, including the greater Sacramento region, in the delicate and time-sensitive mission of saving lives through transplant. And whereas in 2020, even in the midst of a global pandemic, Sierra Donor Services had its most successful year in its nearly 40-year history, making 396 organ transplants possible thanks to the selfless generosity of 139 Northern California organ donors. And whereas increasing the number of registered organ, eye, and tissue donors is a benefit to all Californians and provides more life-saving opportunities across the state and nation. And whereas registering to become an organ, eye, and tissue donor is easily accomplished online at BeTheGiftToday.com or when registering or renewing a California driver's license or ID. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Elk Grove hereby proclaims April 2021 as Donate Life Month in the City of Elk Grove to offer an opportunity to focus attention on the great need for more registered organ, eye, and tissue donors in the greater Sacramento region, in California, and across the nation.
Thank you, sir. It is my honor to present this to Sierra Donor Services Executive Director Sean Van Slick and John Monahan, the transplant recipient, and I believe we have the representatives on the line.
And I think staff will just work. We can pull those speakers in.
Great.
Can you guys hear me okay? This is Sean Van Slick.
Coming in loud and clear. Please proceed.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Singh, Alan, and council members for your support on such an important issue. Again, I'm the Executive Director for Sierra Donor Services. We're based in West Sacramento. I want to take a quick second and recognize Jason Lindgren for helping bring this issue to your attention and for responding so quickly. As outlined in a proclamation, April is Donate Life Month, and where we encourage our communities to register as organ, eye, and tissue donors. And we honor those donor heroes who've saved lives through the selfless gift of donation. As outlined in the proclamation, over 100,000 Americans are waiting for life-saving organs, and 21,000 of those are here in California. Unfortunately, about 20 people a day die while waiting for an organ. Yet, when one person donates, they could save up to 8 lives through organ donation and can improve the lives of up to 75 people through tissue donation. So increasing the number of registered organ, eye, and tissue donors, which I think most folks are accustomed to being the pink dot on your license. It's a benefit to all Californians and can provide more life-saving opportunities across the nation and even more so here in Elk Grove. John Moynihan is one of our colleagues. He's one of your community members, and he's going to share his brief story with you as well on his journey through transplant.
Thank you, Sean, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I live in Old Town Elk Grove, And I'm here literally because someone made a decision over 10 years ago to become an organ donor. And I received that gift of life 10 years ago with a transplanted heart. I contracted a very rare disease that results in, it has no known cause, no known cure. The only way out is a transplant. And someone was good enough to sign to be an organ donor. My heart is 20 years younger than I am, so it's doing great. The engine's not going to be an issue. It may be the chassis though. So I'm doing well. And thanks to that person's decision to become a donor, I've had a great 10 years. My wife and my 3 boys and my grandchild all have me here to be there for them. My grandchild was just born in October. So thanks for this opportunity. Thanks for keeping it local, because this is such an important issue and it's so easy for everyone to help and be part of. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Hope is tightly knitted to the future, and John's story clearly amplifies how organ tissue donation restores lives and gives hope. Our team at Sierra Donor Services is incredibly thankful again to Mayor Singh-Allen and the council and the city of Elk Grove for proclaiming April 2021 as Donate Life Month. And we're committed to supporting you, Mayor Singh-Allen and council and the Elk Grove community, not only in April, but all year long in our efforts to educate the community about organ tissue donation. And just another plug, to register, you can do that at donatelifecalifornia.org or at your local DMV as well. So thank you again very much.
Thank you both. And Sean, can you please reach out to me? I know communities of color, particularly as an Asian American woman, I can tell you that our community doesn't do enough. We're not nearly as strong in registering to be donors as we should be, and it's one of the areas of great need. So more education and awareness to not only my respective community, but other communities of color where I know that the need is high and we're not getting as much of those registrations as we should. So I would personally like to at least coordinate with you to expand outreach within our South Asian community and figure out strategies on how we can get more people to register.
Excellent. Thank you. Well said. And we'll absolutely take you up on that offer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, well, with that, we will go on to our next item.
And that next item will be item 4.4, which is the new hire introductions. And I do have a PowerPoint that I'm going to pull up, but I just open up the floor if any of our staff are going to jump in with any introductions, but otherwise I'll get that underway.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Just briefly recall that we do this now on a quarterly basis virtually. We have a presentation briefly to at least introduce some of our new hires over the last quarter to City Council and members of the public. So we'll have our city clerk pull that up. And again, when we're able to be back in person, we'll be able to have the employees come in person, introduce themselves to you. But while we're here, this is the next best thing. So Jason, I'll turn it over to you.
Hold on, checking to see what's going on here. There we go. believe that was the conclusion of the presentation.
Great. Oh, I'm getting it. Anything you can do on your end? I don't know what's going on.
And sometimes just for many of our participants and our panelists, if you do keep it on mute on your side, then that helps reduce down what might be some background or sound effects that we might get that we don't want.
Thank you. Totally get it.
We'll see if we can kind of proceed forward. You might want to try just muting on your side, Mayor Singh Allen, and then just starting up. Sometimes the mics just pick up some interesting things. With that,
Yeah.
continue. We'll see what we can do. We'll see if we can get some staff over there, see if we can find out what's happening on that end. But with that, we will move into section 5, our public comment. Participating members of the viewing audience may comment on any item not on the agenda that is of the interest of the public and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes or less if a large number of requests are received on a particular subject. City Council cannot take action on non-agendized items raised under public comment until the matter has been specifically included on an agenda as an action item. Members of the public desiring a response to a specific question are encouraged to contact any member of the council or the city manager at any time. Those audience members who wish to address a specific agendized item are encouraged to offer their public comments during consideration of that item. I think we have a few of our attendees. We have some folks that are raising their hand to speak under section 5, our general public comment, and staff will start pulling them in as I pull up the speaker timer for the screen.
Mike Barnett, you may go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Allen and members of the City Council. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address you this evening. I wanted to, I'm sorry?
We're getting a really bad echo, so it looks like it might be happening with others, not just me. Hold on. Can we have a restart?
Also, just to the speaker, Mr. Barnbaum, if you are on speaker mode, if you can turn it off, sometimes that causes a little bit of reverb. So if you can talk directly into your device, if you're on a phone, or if you are on a laptop, just sometimes muting some of the devices around you helps.
All right, I'm on a tablet. Would you like me to turn my tablet to no volume?
You're actually coming through pretty clear, so please proceed. Let's see what happens.
Okay, thank you again. Good evening, Mayor Singh Allen and members of the City Council. My name is Mike Barnbaum, and I wanted to thank Congressman Ami Bera for coming into the meeting tonight, giving a special presentation on the American Rescue Plan. I just wanted to expand a little bit further that thanks to the American Rescue Plan, the COVID-19 relief plan passed in late December, and the CARES Act passed last spring. Folks in the transportation sector are very thankful for this happening, and would not be in the position where we are today as community ambassadors of public transportation, where our strong work throughout cities, counties, special districts, and regions would be where we are today. Please keep an eye at the federal level. The hope is that by Memorial Day, there will be an American Jobs Plan. So that's another piece of legislation to watch for additional funding in the transportation sector. We don't know where it's going, but negotiations are ongoing practically every day as things see fit. So again, I want to thank you for inviting Congressman Ami Bera, and thank you, Mayor, for having a quick get together and gathering with me back at the day where we remembered Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg in Sacramento. Finally, and I will be here later in the meeting for that very item, 10.2. Our item is coming to you, so stay tuned and we'll go into that into more detail when you get to item 10.2. Thank you again, and we'll look forward to talking to you in just a little bit.
Thank you, sir. Next caller, please.
Mayor, I don't see any hands that are currently raised at this time.
Does that conclude our public comment portion?
And I'm confirming the same. I'm just checking my comms and no other requests coming through on the system.
All right, last call. All right, then we are going to move on to the next item.
That'll be section 6, general administration information.
Good evening again. Jason Behrman, City Manager. Several items to report on this evening. First, a report on our Great Plates program. In light of increasing vaccination rates and declining case rates, the city's Great Plates Senior Meals program is ramping down. We are no longer accepting new enrollments, and the last day of service for existing participants is anticipated to be May 7th. Restaurants have been notified, and participating seniors will receive email and phone notifications this week. Staff is working with Meals on Wheels to offer an option for seniors who need continued meal support, and assessments for that will begin next week. The Elk Grove Civic Summer Program introduces Elk Grove Unified School District high school sophomores and juniors to careers in public service. Students will gain local government insight in 2 weeks of classroom style learning and then transition to a 3-week internship experience with local public agencies. Applications are due this Friday, April 16th. It can be found at elkgrovecity.org. The Elk Grove Youth Commission is sponsoring 5 scholarships for youth for high school students grades 9 through 12 who are residents of or attend high school in Elk Grove. The commission wanted to use this year to recognize exceptional students who have excelled in their academics, given back to their community, as well as done something impressive during this year of quarantine. Applications will be accepted April 14th through the 28th. It can be found on the city's website. We are very pleased to announce our Real-Time Information Center was selected by the California Police Chiefs Association as the 2021 recipient for the Excellence in Technology Innovation Award. This highly coveted award recognizes an agency's success in leveraging technology through informative, transformational, and effective uses. This award is made even more impactful given the challenges presented in 2020. The city, in partnership with the Elk Grove Unified School District and Innovative Pathways to Public Service, is participating in Regional Careers and Public Services Day next Wednesday, April 21st. 9th grade students from the district will hear from speakers, attend a resume building workshop, and learn about a variety of careers in public service here at City Hall. This week is National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. Did you know that our dispatchers answered over 140,000 calls in 2020? They answered 95% of those calls in less than 15 seconds. Please take a moment to honor and recognize the hard work and sacrifice of our amazing dispatchers. Also, the second week of this month is National Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week. Thank you to our highly talented animal services staff who are focused on positive outcomes for animals within our community. Just a few examples of their efforts this year. In 2020, we issued over 6,000 animal licenses, vaccinated 1,700 animals, adopted nearly 1,000 animals, and returned 350 animals to their owners. I want to thank them for their great work and appreciate all that they do. A final little bit of recognition, this is National Volunteer Week, is April 18th through the 24th. Despite the program being paused due to COVID-19, our VIPs have contributed over 1,200 volunteer hours since March 2020. From serving the Great Plates Delivered program to working at vaccine clinics to helping with special projects, our VIPs have demonstrated their passion for serving the Elk Grove community. From all of us at the city and PD, thank you to our VIPs for all that you do. I want to also excitedly announce the fact that cities will be receiving $21.8 million in transportation grants. On March 30th, the California Department of Transportation awarded the city an $8.8 million grant from the Highway Safety Improvement Program for a single project. This is a statewide competition, and the city was successful in receiving the largest single project grant award in the entire state. Then on April 1st, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments SACOG Transportation Committee recommended awarding the city a total of $13 million in federal grant funds for 6 more projects. Formal award of these grants is planned on April 15th, 2021 by the SACOG board. These federal grants are from SACOG's 2021 regional funding round and regional active transportation program. Details I like to just go through, I'm not going to go into any detail, but just mention the title and the amount of money for each of the awards that we've received. The first is the $8.8 million award that I mentioned. That's for traffic signal modifications at over 76 intersections throughout the city, improving safety at those intersections. We have our Camera Road 2-lane extension from I-5 to Bruceville, total award of $5 million. It'll get us closer to that extension all the way out to I-5. North Laguna Creek area, Bighorn Boulevard and Franklin Boulevard, total of $2.575 million. Replacement of 6 CNG buses, total of a little over $2 million. Our Laguna Creek Interregional Trail Crossing at State Route 99, $1.775 million. And Elk Grove Boulevard Adaptive Traffic Signal Pilot Project, a little over $1 million. And finally, our Grant Line Road at Wilton Road, operational improvements, a total award of $500,000. So really pleased with all the things that are happening, and those grant awards will go a long way into improving transportation and traffic within our community. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions the council might have.
Thank you, Mr. Berman. Great report. Any hands raised from council colleagues? I'm not seeing any. So we will move on to the next item. Thank you for the update.
The next item will be section 7, council comments, reports, and future agenda items.
Very good. We will start with council member Spies.
There we go. Okay, so let's see. I want to report on Sacramento Transportation Authority Governing Board meeting was on April 8th. There were no significant items to report. Want to thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to volunteer on the the volunteer award committee on April 1st. I enjoyed working with community members and reviewing some great candidates. For obvious reasons, I'll keep the results to myself because no one likes a spoiler. And on March 25th, we had a Sacramento Public Library Authority meeting, and there's no significant items to report. And you know, in the administrative report, there was a whole lot of goodness in that. And just I could echo a lot of good things on it, but one thing I did, I mean, I don't want to make any of them any less or more than another, but I do want to give some recognition to the Great Plates program. I want to commend the team that put this together. It was put together in short order. It was put together in a pretty uncertain time, and it was a benefit not just to our seniors, but to a number of restaurants as well. And so I want to thank that team for making it happen. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Hume.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Very quick report. On the 26th of last month, I chaired, my first meeting as chair, excuse me, for the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority. Nothing specific to report for Elk Grove, except that we are still continuing to work on siting a location for the heavy rail station. Along with Councilmember Suen, participated in the Affordable Housing Committee a meeting on the 7th of this month, wherein we had 2 applications, both very similar in size. However, one was a stronger application as far as cost per unit, and looks like we will be awarding some of our affordable housing funds to that applicant. Monday evening had a board meeting, which the only thing to note is the item that will be on our agenda later this evening. The board passed all of the terms of the annexation agreement unanimously with no comment or objection at all. So that was very momentous. And then this morning, with the mayor, participated in the Sanitation District Board meeting. It was a budget workshop. Nothing to report specifically for Elk Grove, except for the fact that, again, the district remains in a strong financial position with over $500 million in reserves. And we are still projected to stay well under what we thought we would have had to be for the sewer rates in order to pay for the Echo Water treatment plant upgrade, the $2 billion project. So good news from them. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great report. Let's see, Councilmember Suen.
Thank you, Mayor. Lots been said already. Since we last met, I chaired the Transportation Committee at Sacramento Council of Governments. So you heard the good news earlier, a lot of funds coming our way for those projects. I do want to congratulate Public Works and staff on achieving or obtaining the $8 million grant from Caltrans. That's fantastic news. And then, as Councilmember Hume mentioned, we selected a firm to move on to go to the loan negotiations for 125 affordable units that will hopefully be coming online very soon, which we have a great need for here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Nguyen.
Thank you, ma'am. Not much to report. Wanted to recognize Ms. Sarah Bontrager for being recognized in the paper for the homeless program that was put together. Great story, great program. Really proud to read about it in the papers. Also wanted to, I failed to get the certificates for our essential workers during Women's History Month. And so the mayor and I worked with the Senate office and Assemblymember Cooper's office on getting everybody's certificates. And I just got word that they will be in hand in a few days here. And so the mayor and I talked about holding a small little reception so we can get these certificates over to all of our essential workers that were recognized during Women's History Month. And so we'll have that soon, and we'll make sure that we can recognize all of the essential workers that we talked about or showcased at the last meeting, and give you your certificates as well too. That's all I have.
Thank you, and we will do that, observing all safety protocols for COVID. Nothing more to report. So I also, the Library Authority that Councilmember Spies mentioned, STA, and then this morning Regional SAN and Councilmember Hume gave an excellent update. So yeah, just busy for all of us, looks like. Thank you, everyone. We will move on to the next item.
And the next item is section 8, the consent calendar items.
All right, I would like to open the public comment opportunity.
And reviewing, no comments were received prior. And as we look at the board, no one's using the raise hand feature. So I do not believe we have any public comment on the consent calendar items.
Thank you. I will go ahead and close the public comment opportunity. And
Move approval, Hume.
we have a motion to approve.
Second, soon.
We have a motion and a second.
With
And
that,
Mayor, I'm sorry, just so I can add in, I'll vote on everything else except for 8.5. I'll abstain from that. And that was for the PMA negotiations and MOU.
Perfect. Duly noted. Mr. Hobbs, anything to add to that?
No, that's sufficient. The vote on the consent will simply not count a vote from Councilmember Nguyen for that item. She'll be shown it as an abstention, but you can vote on the item as a block if you so choose. It doesn't need to be separately polled.
Very good. We will move it as a block. We have a motion and a second with council members abstention on the one item.
and we'll go with the roll call vote for the balance of the items, and noting that abstention on 8.5. The roll call vote, starting with Councilmember Spies.
Yes.
Councilmember Hume.
Aye.
Councilmember Suen.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nguyen.
Aye.
And Mayor Singh Allen.
Aye.
And those consent items will pass 5-0 with the exception of 8.5, which will pass 4-0 with that abstention noted by Vice Mayor Nguyen.
Very good. We will move on to the next item where we have moved up our CSD presentation.
At the will of the council, where we are at is with our public hearings for section 9. But if you do want to hear item 10.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was for the items on 10. So we'll proceed.
So proceeding with our public hearings under section 9, that would take us on to item 9.1, which is a public hearing that was continued from January 13th, 2021. Consider a resolution of intent to approve a general plan amendment in response to an application related to the Sheldon Park Estates North Private Gated Community Project.
All right. We have a staff report.
Yes, Jason, unfortunately, I'm not able to share my screen.
And we have staff will be assisting you with that. We'll see if that can make the connection. See what I can do. And you should be good now. Yeah. And thank you, team, for getting that set up, but you should be ready to go. And we have the visual, and you are in presentation mode.
Great. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Kira Killingsworth, and I'm the project planner, and I'll be presenting to you the Sheldon Parks Estates North Project, the request for a private gated community in the rural area. The City Council reviewed the request for the general plan amendment for a portion of an under construction subdivision, Sheldon Park Estates North, at the January 13, 2021 City Council meeting. The applicant originally requested that the general plan policy RA-1-8 be removed from this subdivision only. At the meeting, the City Council provided direction to staff to remove the policy for all the subdivisions in the rural area. Since the January meeting, staff has mapped all parcels with the rural residential designation by size. There are a total of 1,427 parcels in the rural area. Of that number, 1,398 parcels, about 98%, are less than 10 acres in size. The light blue and dark blue on the map are all parcels that range from 0 to 10 acres. And only 29 parcels in the rural area are larger than 11 acres, about 2%. Currently, there's only one gated community in the rural area, the Shires Project. The Shires is 12 parcels on about 28 acres. Sheldon Park Estates North is the second request to be converted into gated community, and it's about 75 acres with 28 parcels. And this is a portion of the original project. The original project was 110 acres. If the general plan policy is removed, the next step for the subdivision is to go through the city's process to privatize the neighborhood, which includes abandonment of the public right-of-way, new roads will become private roads, and a formation of a homeowners association with a funding mechanism for maintenance of private improvements. Some of these improvements include pavement, curb, sidewalk, streetlights, drainage, and signs. Due to the requirements, staff believes gated subdivisions on the smaller parcels, 10 acres or less, are unlikely, as they would most likely be cost prohibitive. Recently, the council received public comment from a resident regarding concern of nearby trails. In the City of Elk Grove Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trails Master Plan, there are proposals to have a Class 1 multi-use trail north and south near Waterman Road and west to east along Sheldon Road, and another proposed trail along Laguna Creek going north and south, and a Class 2 bike lane along Waterman Road. The proposed trails and bike lane will be west and south of proposed gate locations for the Sheldon Park Estates North project. The proposed trails and bike lane will not be interfered by the private neighborhood of the Sheldon Park Estates community. Staff determined that the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act per state guideline, section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures. Any infrastructure improvements shall be provided by the applicant. The general fund will not be used to pay for any of the construction or infrastructure for this project. The next steps for the council, staff wanted to let the council know that the City of Elk Grove is a general law city, which means by state law, the general plan may only be amended no more than 4 times a year. Earlier this year, the council already approved one consolidated general plan amendment, and staff anticipates additional amendments over the course of the year, with the next consolidated general plan amendment in May 2021. Therefore, the action recommended is to adopt a resolution of intent to amend the general plan at a future council meeting. Staff recommends that the City Council adopts a resolution finding the project exempt from CEQA pursuant to state CEQA guidelines, section 15303, tentatively approving the applicant's request to amend the general plan policy to prohibit gated neighborhood and subdivisions in the rural area as requested for the Sheldon Park Estates North project, and declaring the City Council's intent to approve the general plan amendment that removes the general plan policy RA-1-8, which states prohibits gated neighborhoods and subdivisions in the rural area. With that, that concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions, staff is available, as well as the applicant for the Sheldon Park Estates project.
Thank you, Kira. I will declare the public hearing open. and I will invite the applicant to speak. Do we have the applicant?
Oh. Hi, this is Brian Wilson with Sheldon Park Estates. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Indeed. Please proceed.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Mayor and council members. We really appreciated your support the first time we brought this in front of you. The only letter we've received since, as Kira pointed out, was in regards to the bike paths and roadways for the public pedestrians, and those won't be interrupted at all. Really, I just want to say thank you again for your support for Sheldon Park Estates, and also to thank Kira for doing a really good job putting everything together. If you need anything or have any questions from me, I'm definitely available. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. At this time, I will open the public comment opportunity.
And it looks like we do have a speaker, and I'll pull up that speaker.
Sharon Anderson, you may unmute your mic. You have 3 minutes.
Well, hello. Thank you, Mayor and council members, for letting me speak on this. I don't quite understand I'm glad that there was a conversation about the trail that passes through the Sheldon North Estates. I don't understand the word, it will not be interrupted. Does that mean it will be open and accessible to everybody, as was intended by the Trails Master Plan? Or does the word uninterrupted means that it'll still be built but only accessible by the residents that live there? So I need clarification. Otherwise, I will state that I am not in favor of the way that you're going with this. It needs to remain open. So if somebody could clarify what the word not interrupted means, would really help me out.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Can we get either Kira or the applicant?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Sorry for the wrong wording, but the trails and bike lane will be open. They will not be affected by this private neighborhood.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else for public comments?
And I'm not seeing any other raised hands for public comment. That would conclude public comment under item 9.1.
All right, then I will go ahead and close the public comment opportunity. Any closing words from the applicant?
I'd like to thank city staff, mayor and council members for supporting us in this. Nothing further from us. Thank you again.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wilson. I will go ahead and declare the public hearing closed and open it up for council deliberation. I will start with Council Member Hume.
Thank you, Mayor. No comments. I'd be happy to move the item.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to move forward and a second.
And for the roll call vote for the resolution under item 9.
Do we have any other discussions that anyone wants to ask before we go to a vote?
Yeah, there is. Look, I just want to be super clear from Ms. Anderson. If I can get one more go back on that question, because I believe this answer is important to her. From what I understand, the trail is completely outside of the development entirely, right? And the gates will in no way, shape, form impede anyone's travel along that path, right?
Right.
Got it. Thank you. Now I can say yes.
Any other questions or comments before we take our vote? Okay, hearing none.
For that roll call vote, I will start with Councilmember Spies.
Yes.
Councilmember Hume.
Aye.
Councilmember Suen.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Nguyen.
Aye.
And Mayor Singh Allen.
Aye.
The resolution of item 9.1 will pass 5-0.
All right, we will go on to our next item.
So this is where we will head into section 10, our regular agenda action items and recommendations. And per the approval of the agenda, the request was to first hear item 10.4, which is to receive and file the Elk Grove Aquatic Center annual report for 2020. Sorry, I had to hop ahead myself.
Good evening, council members. My name is Lana Yoshimura. I'm the Community Event Center Manager that manages District 56, including the Elk Grove Aquatic Center. I'm joined by Mike Dobson, the Director of Parks and Recreation from the Cosumnes Community Services District, to present the annual report. Just to give you a snapshot in time, this report will cover January through December of 2020, which you know has been an unusual year, which Mike and I will touch on during the presentation. So I will turn it over to Mike.
Excellent. Thanks, Lana. So I have the PowerPoint. I can't share my screen, so I don't know. I mean, we all have the same PowerPoint, so I can just tell if someone else wants to share their screen that has it, I can tell them to move through or.
Mike, I just made it so that you can share.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And we have visual and presentation mode. Please proceed.
All right, excellent. Good evening, Mayor Singh-Allen, Vice Mayor Nguyen, and members of the City Council. I'm Mike Dobson, Recreation and Community Services Director for the Cosumnes CSD. I'd first like to thank you guys for moving this up in the agenda. I think this gives the staff that are online or watching online the ability to maybe leave this meeting a little early if they don't want the other things. So we really appreciate that. As Lana said, I'm here tonight to present on the 2020 annual report for the Elk Grove Aquatic Center. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't kind of start this presentation by acknowledging some of the city staff that myself or the staff kind of on-site routinely work with, and that's kind of most notably Lana Yoshimura. With her, I think we have a really great partnership. There's a lot of great collaboration that kind of allows each of our organizations to support each other while we kind of trying to achieve success. So just, I'm going to go real quickly, like a little bit of a background. In October of 2017, we entered into that management and operations agreement. Fast forward to May of 2019, we had a really successful grand opening, that kind of led us into the summer of 2019. I know because I've seen most of you there. You guys have all been out to the facility. Great facility. It has many top-notch amenities. I think the first and the most notable is the 50-meter pool. It's obviously the newest and one of very few in the greater Sacramento area, if not one of the very few in Northern California. You'll notice some funny names. Staff have come up with themed names for most of the amenities there. Just to kind of better entice the public for public usage. The programs, some of these we'll go over a little bit. We offer a variety of program. Many of these are kind of staples in aquatic center programming. The big thing, we look to just engage all the members of our diverse community with kind of new and unique programmings that we can offer at this great facility. As we look and see kind of some things by the numbers, I guess I'll first start with, the asterisk at the bottom. As Lana kind of mentioned, I'm sure you're not surprised that, due to the pandemic, we're really limited in what we could offer. I do have, I guess, information on hand as far as last year's numbers. If at the end of the presentation, you're kind of wondering where things matched up. But as you can see, like we probably did a lot less swim lessons, maybe a third of the people for rec swim. Some of the fitness classes, when we were able to, have started to pick back up. Obviously, being outdoors and some of the fitness components are one of the very few things that were allowed or have been allowed kind of under the county guidance. Pool parties, pool rentals, kind of once again, based on the gathering limitations, especially in going into last summer where there was maybe a lot of either confusing language or there wasn't really like an area where this kind of wound up, which kind of came under gatherings, which really weren't allowed. So, we've talked about kind of some challenges. 2020 would have been the first full year of operation. But, based on the pandemic, there's a lot of things that, we had to kind of audible or really be adaptable. We've put it into two categories, facility and operational issues. For the facility, it's kind of as we ventured into that phase 2, the construction, there was some dust and some dirt issues, which, affected some pool equipment, which is, since been remedied. A few plumbing issues, with the sink and the water temps, also which have been remedied by contacting the plumbers. Other things from the facility issues, the heater, obviously there's been some issues with the front hinges, crack in the slide flume, which was under warranty, some of the chair lift and the ADA components under warranty, and then, the paint flaking from the trellis, which is set to be repainted, looks like this month. Next, we want to look into like maybe some operational things, like we've kind of talked about, in shutting down in March through late June, and then kind of being limited. So, like I said, there were some operational issues. I think I do want to point out, as we talk about our full-time staffing being redeployed to do a lot more frontline stuff. As a CSD, one of the things that we did really early on was we enacted our fiscal contingency plan that really kind of limited any kind of spending. We extended this to all of our staff, including those at the Elk Grove Aquatic Center. For all of recreation, we laid off almost all of our part-time staff in March. When programs could start returning, that's when we deployed our full-time staff to work the front line. We had, some of the challenges of rehiring the staff when various phases were able to open up. Obviously, there was a lot of new sanitation policies. Like I talked about, limiting of the spending of service and supplies. The limited capacity when we could open up. And with that, we looked at, there had to be a minimum, to run certain programs. Because, for all the programs that we ran, we didn't really want to subsidize it, nor really could we subsidize it. There was the challenges as we moved from tier to tier and then sometimes backwards to tiers. That became, I guess one of those ongoing things, as well as the changing information from both kind of the state and the county. Accomplishments. I didn't want to sit up here and talk all doom and gloom, even with some of the limited things that we had going on this year with the pandemic. There were still some great accomplishments from that, the positive relationship that I alluded to earlier. We had some new full-time staff come on. Some of the programs that we run in the aquatic section won state awards for the California Parks and Recreation Society. We won the 2020 Award of Excellence in Creating Community in the category of health and wellness. Another one from the state aquatic section in the state social media marketing was around May is National Water Safety Month. And one of the real specialty parts about that is we were able to produce that in both English and Spanish. We increased our pool of hiring. We still had staff that were able to do online learning to increase their knowledge, skills, and ability. We increased our networking capacity with other people throughout the state. I think I'm very fortunate as to one of the things that throughout the course of my career, I've been able to develop a lot of really good foundations and people that I can lean on throughout the course of the state, and if not the US, that provided some really good guidance, some really good ideas that we could kind of borrow from. One of those, like I talked about, being able to pivot. When we could open up Rec Swim, we offered 2 sessions because we were really limited in the capacity. So we wanted to make it kind of open for everyone and give all members of the community the opportunity to attend. For a lot of the fitness stuff that we did, it was pre-registration, limited the numbers, those various things. And then, in the beginning, as things started opening up, one of the things that we could provide was kind of childcare. Obviously, at the aquatics facility, we wouldn't normally provide childcare, but like I talked about, is kind of being good partners, since that was something that we could do and something that could make revenue. We discussed that with the staff and decided that's something that we wanted to run one of the sites there, just kind of make use of it. Obviously, as summer progressed along and, some of the guidance became a little more clear, the childcare kind of went to an aquatics-based summer camp, which was a lot more fun for the kids. Other accomplishments that I kind of talked about was, I think the staff, all the aquatic staff, that work for these organizations did a great job, where it usually takes them 2 to 3 months to plan and implement and get staff trained and ready to work. They did it in probably 2 to 3 weeks. Programs our programs continue to grow as as the county guidelines alter or kind of lessen some of the restrictions. Fitness and water fitness has become a huge source of success for us, especially during, the pandemic time when being outside and being active were, really kind of limited. So that was really helpful. Obviously, safety was of top priority as it related to, the touching surfaces, social distancing. And like as I mentioned before, just the redeployment of staff. So that kind of brings us into summer of 2021 coming up. Probably one of the questions you're going to ask is, what are we doing this summer as we're kind of coming out of COVID? So obviously right now we're still in the tiered system. So a lot of what's going to be allowed until I guess mid-June is maybe going to be based on the tiered system. After that, we're still trying to get some information. We're fortunate that members of our fire service, are still in contact with the county as far as, what the reopening is going to look like for kind of the state and with the county. So just trying to be as adaptable as possible. If, everything is almost full go mid-June, we're trying to program to the maximum of our ability with the staffing that we have as we try and bring back more staff. So obviously with that, there's still, many unknowns as far as, what can or can't happen and what that will fully look like. But, I think one of the important things is, we want to be good partners and continue to be good partners with you guys and, and to be as, we'll call it shovel ready as possible when we can do things for all the members of the community and the aquatics programs. So I think with that, I think Lana has the next two.
So council members, what I'd like to do is walk you a little bit through the numbers and the budget. And because this covers January through December, it hovers over 2 different fiscal years. So we completed fiscal year 1920 in June 30th of 2020. These are the actual costs that came in. Keep in mind when you're looking at this, we were closed between March and June of 2020. So we were closed to both CSD programming as well as user groups. So we had no revenue coming in at that time, which is kind of reflected in the subsidy. The other thing about this budget is this is the first budget that we kind of created for an operating budget for this facility as a brand new. We've learned a lot of things in terms of establishing a baseline for things like utilities, pool chemical costs. So Mike, if you can go to the next slide. You see that kind of reflected in the current year's operating budget. What you're seeing now is, we're looking at being right on target for user group revenue. We actually think we're going to be ahead of the curve there. We're hopeful that CSD will have a strong programming season from swim lessons all the way through rec swim this summer. So our hope is that we're able to catch up with some of that without any capacity limits. I think that concludes our presentation. Mike and I will take any questions that you might have.
Thank you for that presentation. I will now open the public comment opportunity.
And if I could just ask staff if you can, close out of the share screen. From our attendees, we didn't have any received prior comments, and none of our attendees are raising hands on this item. I believe that's going to conclude our public comment for item 10.4.
Great, thank you. Then I will go ahead and close the public comment opportunity and open it up for council comments. We will start with council member, well, Hume, since your camera just came on.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, great presentation. I think we all look forward to a normal year where your job is easier to anticipate and the results of what transpired that year is easier to retell. And most importantly, perhaps the families are able to get out and enjoy the full season as intended. Lana, just a quick question relative to your two slides. What was there any particular reason why we were so far off on the original projection for the cost of water? Obviously, it went down from what our revised projection was because we didn't use the pool, and so there probably wasn't as much evaporation. But was that just simply the cost of recouping what was lost?
So I think you're referring to the first slide. I think that was FY 1920. That $8,000, it actually predates me. I think that number came from the consultant. And so that was put in as the budget. And since we were in the process of establishing a baseline, we went with what the consultant recommended. So, and as we've learned and continue to learn, since we have yet to have a normal year, we're continuing to build that historical data. New facilities are like that, both the center and the aquatics facility. It's going to take us at least another year or two to get that type of data so we can really hone in on the most efficient way to run those amenities.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Spies.
Yeah, just no particular question, just a comment that to echo a bit with Councilmember Hume. I do certainly hope that next year gives us some better opportunities as we get to the new normal, as well as I hope that we can find some operational improvements and perhaps some tweaks and changes in programming that can help to cover up, or excuse me, not to cover up, it's the absolute wrong way to say, but to cover some of those expenses. And so I want to thank you, Mr. Dobson. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything that CSD does for us to make a fantastic pool there. And thank you so much, Lana. I appreciate your presentation today. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Sun.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, thanks for being here. We appreciate our partnership with CSD. Lana, thank you as well for your work in this informational briefing. I wanted to ask a quick question regarding what you had said about getting back to normal. I think all of us are hoping that too. And in terms of, getting more of those recreational uses coming again, are you guys seeing, interest coming right now? I mean, like what was the Junior Olympics? The Junior Olympics was one, and some other, Gators and Piranha Swim Clubs tournaments, or obviously I'm not a swimmer, but the events that are coming, you're seeing those being booked right now?
So we still have what is the Junior Olympics, the Bill Rose Classic, on the books for July. USA Swim as well as NorCal Swim are both making determinations as to whether or not they're going to host their meets. Currently, the guidelines say that you can only have 2 teams in competition, preferably from the same county. If a team comes from another county, they have to get approval from from both county public health organizations. For something like the Junior Olympics, that would be tremendously problematic. So they are in the process of trying to determine whether or not hosting these larger meets is even going to be applicable. I know what they've done in other venues. For instance, Arizona, they split the meet between 3 different venues, and they had them do heats in different areas and the championship in one pool to try to get through those types of capacity limitations. So we're in contact with USA Swim as well as the Outgrove Aquatics Club, the Gators, who are the host team, as to how that information is going to trickle down. We do have it booked. What that's going to look like, we have no clue at this point.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much. I'm glad nice to see there's at least interest brewing right now. Thank you.
Oh, I have a ton of interest, more interest than I can handle.
Good to know.
Vice Mayor Wynn, was that it? Councilmember Sin, was that the end of your?
Yes, thank you. Yep. Yes, thank you.
Vice Mayor Nguyen?
Yeah, no, Councilmember Soon asked the same questions I was gonna ask, only because I've had people already ask if there's an opportunity to start booking and reserving, and when can that open back up again? I think there's a lot of interest, as you had said earlier, that you've got more interest than you can handle. I think and just our community is wanting to know if they can rent out the space as well too, and start gathering and having private parties there. As we do our second reopening, maybe the council can go down the slide and jump off the diving board again, or we can have a competition against CSD directors.
I saw that mean dive you took from there. I'm not, no, it's all you. Thank you. Any other comments, Council or Vice Mayor Nguyen?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both, Mike and Lana. Great presentation. I too echo all of the comments, and I'm just super excited for our community to be able to fully utilize our facilities and really, you know, all of the great amenities that we have out there. So last year has been challenging for everyone, but it's great that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
So I do want to close by thanking CSD for their partnership in this. I do think Mike and his team have been incredibly innovative at this facility. So one of the things you'll see is that our programming is a little bit different from Wackford to offer the community the most broad span of programming. So you could take Aquaspin and Aqua Body Strong at our facility, you know, the swim and stretch and a lot of other things. So they have really come out of the box and tried to innovate in terms of the program and not create competition between the two facilities.
Right.
We are looking forward to our water fitness classes being very successful this summer. You would have a difficult time registering for some of them now, and we hope that trend continues as we move towards summer. Thank you.
All encouraging news. Thank you. Thank you both.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We will move on to our next item.
And that will take us back to item 10.1, which is receive an update on the Smart City Plan project and provide direction on the next steps as appropriate.
All right, good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Christopher Jordan, Director of Strategic Planning and Innovation for the city. For this item, I'm going to be joined by Story Bellows and Kate Garman from Cityfy, our consultant on the project. But I'll do a little bit of orientation, and then between the two of them, we'll bounce back and forth a little bit on the presentation for you. So tonight's intent, we'd like to go over and do some introductions on the team, just so you're aware of who's working on this effort. We're going to talk through some objectives for the project overall and some of the history about how we got here and the direction that we're going, and seek your direction and concurrence on next steps. Before we get to that point, though, we will go through a little brief history of smart cities and what they are, and some examples of smart city projects that give us some sense of grounding for this effort. And then, of course, an opportunity for your direction and a discussion. So for tonight, as I mentioned, we want to talk about sort of what it means for Elk Grove potentially to be a smart city, what that may look like, and talk about the state of smart city as an industry overall and some of the ideas that are out there. And this will give us an opportunity to provide feedback to the team and understanding the direction you'd like to go, what input you have on it, and make sure that the approach we're taking for Elk Grove is the right one and one in fitting with the direction that we want. And then some of the concept efforts that may go into this. As we look at this and start thinking about what it means to be a smart city, I really want to highlight the fact that we're not starting from ground zero. There's a lot going on in the city already that we could classify in many regards as a smart city effort. This includes some of the basic data usage that we already have with our open data portal and our GIS platform. We recently are wrapping up a data audit, looking at how we use data around the agency and ways it's used to make decisions. Of course, as you heard at the beginning of tonight's agenda with the Real-Time Information Center and that being an award-winning facility for the city as a great asset. Our police UAV program that was recently launched is another great example of the use of data and making decisions and how our staff is deployed to incidences, being able to help support the city and the community. Last year, we rolled out some ITS improvements in the Green Wave project. Of course, with COVID, that made full implementation a little bit challenging, and it's been on again, off again, on again effort, but we're looking to expand that program. And as things open up more and we see increases in traffic volumes, there'll be opportunities to further enhance the timing of signals and make sure we're moving folks as efficiently around the city as we can. The performance measure program is actually probably one of the more older elements that I'd classify as smart city. We've had that for almost a decade or so and are looking at doing revamping on it. So you'll hear as we get into the budget process from the budget team about ways they're looking at improving that going forward. A couple of years ago, you saw an autonomous and connected vehicle readiness plan. So that has set us up for the future of transportation and where the industry may be going overall. That's a critical element that feeds in here. And then finally, most recently, our Workplace of the Future strategy, which we'll be talking about more and rolling out as we come out of the COVID pandemic and start to look about how our staff interacts, both internally and externally, ways to improve those operations, take advantage of teleworking as a reliable form of ensuring that services are provided, but benefits to employees as well. And then making sure that not only do we have in-person services, but digital services available to our customers and residents to make sure that there are a multitude of opportunities and ways that you can interact with the city and receive those services and benefits. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Story, who's going to talk a little bit more about the team and some of the history. Story.
Thanks so much, Christopher. And you can jump to the next slide. My name is Story Bellows. I'm a partner with CityFi. We are really excited to be here to be working with the city of Elk Grove. We really work at the intersection of public and private sectors using an outcomes-driven approach to ensuring that we are deploying all sorts of new technologies, leveraging the resources that exist in our communities to meet real needs and to solve real problems. We are a nationwide consultancy, small consultancy, and we're partnered on this project with MIG, which we're really grateful to have their local presence in the Sacramento area. Next slide. I will be joined this evening, or I am joined this evening by my colleague, Kate Garman, and also a couple of the other team members that we have here, Dan Amsden from MIG, as well as Chelsea Lawson, who is a data analyst, business analytics specialist with our CityFi team. And I will briefly go through a history of smart cities, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions when we get to the discussion period. But I want to start with the next slide, Christopher, please. This is not really a new concept. These are two covers of Scientific American from 100 years apart. From 1910, looking at transportation options and the impacts on the public realm in Chicago. And then 100 years later, 110 years later, we're still talking about many of these same issues. Next slide. What is new, however, I think are the compounding issues that we are all in cities facing. Obviously, right now, the real issues that have been put in front of us in terms of responding to and recovering from the COVID crisis, both on the health, economic standpoints, also looking at natural disasters, man-made disasters, events management, and political cycles. It's no longer just a matter of dealing with one challenge. As you all well know, we are thrown in front of responding to many of these challenges at the same time. And so next slide. So there is a huge opportunity for us to think about how do we start to leverage technology? How do we use new tools to more effectively manage our cities? And over the last couple of decades, we've gone from thinking about a clockwork city where, like, for example, I'll use an analogy of transportation. The bus is actually running on time, to a much more open city where you may have an app on your phone that is allowing you to know when the bus is coming, so you can walk outside at the appropriate time, or that it's late. To where we're seeing things now is what we call the emergent city, where it's not just the bus, it's not just city government that might be providing some of the solutions that we're dealing with, or solutions to the challenges that we have, but it's a more open ecosystem where we can start to take advantage of some of the other tools and resources that we have available to us in our communities. So next slide, what this looks like in practice, and what we often talk about are, sort of the intersection of things with sensors, stuff that communicates, and decisions around data. And a lot of this, there's a lot of potential to use these things, but where we really try to focus is on meaningful use cases, making sure that we're not just deploying technology for technology's sake, but that we're deploying it to respond to the real challenges of residents, of businesses, of people trying to navigate our cities. Next slide. So this, in terms of the actual technology, and these are things that many of you have seen, sensors where a crosswalk can provide a walk signal a little bit longer for someone who is crossing a street more slowly, where signals are prioritized to ensure that emergency vehicles have the right of way and can get through quickly, where we have access to public Wi-Fi, so you can download a book from the library to read, or you can research something for a school paper while you're waiting for your next activity. And I think it's really important, next slide, for us to think about this technology with people at the center. And I think that's something that CityFi really holds as a core value. We care very deeply about the outcomes for the communities that we're working with. And this is a British Standards Institute definition of a smart city that I will read out loud. Or it says, a smart city is where there's effective integration of physical, digital, and human systems in the built environment to deliver a sustainable, prosperous, and inclusive future for its citizens. And I think, again, making sure that we put this human-centered language at the forefront of our approach to smart cities, and to thinking about a strategy for how we deploy new technology, how we create processes that enable us to solve real problems is our focus. So next slide. Technology is not a panacea. As we think about a smart city strategy, we are very much focused on people, on policy, and on process innovation, because so much of that is really at the core of ensuring that we're not just placing a bet on a particular technology. These tools and solutions are changing so rapidly that I think having clear processes in place is maybe the less sexy side of smart cities, if you want to talk about it, but it's where there's real meaningful and lasting impact. And so a process that we like to use, next slide, is called the waterfall, where we ensure, and we are working with the external and internal stakeholders in Elk Grove to make sure that we're really clear in terms of the values and the vision and the mission, that those are the things that are going to last. We're not going to change those. And we can look at how Elk Grove has already articulated some of its values, some of the vision for where the city is going, to ensure that once we get down to the resources and the tactics, we have a very clear framework around why we are actually deploying different things, why we are running certain experiments, why we are looking to make change, to ensure that it's in service of some of the bigger objectives that we have as a city, rather than just trying new technology for technology's sake. And so we are, next slide, early in the process of working with the city of Elk Grove. We have a 4-part process where we've gone through an assessment, interviewed a number of stakeholders, both in and outside City Hall. We are now currently working to start to frame the priorities for a smart city strategy for Elk Grove. And then we will report, and I think most importantly, act. We do not want to leave the city with a report that's going to sit on a shelf. We want to make sure that we're building skills and competency and increasing the capacity of folks in and outside City Hall to deliver on a smart city strategy, to be able to make the decisions that are going to be necessary in the long run to be able to position Elk Grove to continue to take advantage of all of the new resources and tools and assets that may be at its disposal. And with that, I think, Christopher, I will turn it back to you.
Great, thanks, Story. So I want to highlight just briefly the outreach that we've done to date, because I think it's meaningful in looking at what the next steps and how the strategy of the plan will come together. First off, we'll talk in a moment about the public workshop that we held at the end of last month, sort of an initial test case or initial entry discussion with the community. Definitely, though, more workshops are being planned. We've also had our internal facing working group. Essentially, it's a group of staff, interdisciplinary across the organization. We have nearly every department engaged at this point, and we'll be engaging with more folks in the next couple of months to talk about the issue, the idea of a smart city plan, to talk through what candidate projects start to look like and how we can integrate this into general business processes. And then CityFi has been conducting some interviews with members of the community, and we'll highlight those in a minute, but looking across the business sector, nonprofit sector, and then our government partners, including Elk Grove Unified and the CCSD. All the information throughout development will be posted up on the city's websites, which we've already got started. It's got some preliminary information, and we'll be deploying more current information in the coming weeks. But elkgrovecity.org/smartcity is the URL. So I want to highlight the public workshop feedback. We actually held 2 events on the same day, a morning workshop and an evening workshop. Unfortunately, attendance was very low. No one, we did have quite a few RSVPs for the events, but unfortunately, we only had 1 attendee at the morning workshop. So these comments we received is from a single individual. Broadly, some of the feedback points we heard is that a smart city needs to be one that listens to its residents. I think it's an absolutely critical piece, and staff would agree with that. There were concerns the individual raised regarding long-term health impacts, particularly around technology, potential to overdo it. And I think you heard Story speak to this a little bit about technology not necessarily being the panacea. I think that's a critical piece that there's some alignment there. Understanding what are the real and tangible benefits to the city. What is it we're trying to get out of with this effort, with the projects that we would be undertaking, the furtherance, the evolution of this topic over time. Some real guidance on that, I think, is going to be critical and a good feedback piece we heard. What data is the city going to be gathering, and what are the privacy implications? One of the things we'll be talking about through this is our looking at that data, how we hold it, what ultimately is shareable, what sort of anonymity we can provide. There's a whole lot of new information and new guidance that's out there, some best practices that we'll be looking to emulate and evolve against. And then one key takeaway we also heard was there really should be a priority about development of a citywide fiber optic network to every door. Many of our neighborhoods, particularly the newer areas, have some good infrastructure with the broadband carriers that are out there, but there are pockets of the city where there are really lacking in services, particularly in some of the industrial areas. So that's an effort that we're also taking a look at, not necessarily directly with this project, but through other efforts. In fact, I believe there's a priority project item that you've directed through the retreat and the mission and goals of the city to take a look at that. So it's something we'll be spending some time on in the coming months. In terms of the other community feedback and outreach we've heard through the interview process, just broadly, overall positive feedback on the city and its services and performance. Certainly the context of Elk Grove as a bedroom community, the majority of residential development that exists here, that's a good understanding and a green point of how we look at these and the types of projects we would undertake. Certainly with the growing city that we have and the few of the new development that will be occurring over time, how that gets managed and interwoven into this plan will be something to take a look at. Traffic and safe transportation continue to be a big piece, and we've heard that continuously in outreach we've done with the community over the years. And then opportunities to connect with existing climate efforts, I think, is a great one to take a look at as we continue our sustainability efforts. And then we also heard from some folks about the need for more robust internet service. So a lot of agreement on that front. So I'll jump over here a little bit. So in terms of the process, we're finishing up a Story, describe those 4 steps. We're finishing the assess phase, moving into defining, which is where we want to touch base with you all at this point. So we're going to look real briefly at what we think are 3 pillars for the plan, our working concept for them. Sort of think of these a little bit as a vision statement, if you will. And then we'll talk about some projects specifically that we may want to look at to emulate in some regards, or at least our guidepost. So we think there are 3 key pillars in the Smart City Plan that we ought to be focusing around. First, the idea of proactive community engagement. So how do we engage with our community? How do we gather feedback from them and involve them in the decision-making process? Obviously, that's a two-way street then with data and how we present that information and make that interaction the most positive that it can be. Second, data-driven decision-making. So the opportunity that we have data, we can use it to make decisions about the city and make good decisions that are taking us in the right direction, at least the direction we want to go. So integrating into our decision-making process, the use of that data, the analytics that can be available. Some of that we have today with our GIS platform, but there's certainly a lot more data that we can utilize. And this is not just decisions that we would undertake, say, at a management level or at the city council level. These can be day-to-day decisions, including things like traffic operations, opportunities to engage with more dynamic traffic signal operations. Those are things that can happen sort of on the fly based upon real-time conditions. And then finally, inclusive innovation. So how can we make sure to involve a broad spectrum of the community and make sure that the decisions that are happening address the needs and are inclusive to everyone? So with that, I am going to turn it over, I believe, to Kate.
That's right. Thank you, Christopher, and thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to discuss this with you tonight. We just wanted to highlight some examples as we work on the pillars and what we've heard from the community, including first off with the proactive engagement. And this is really to have that inclusive future for residents that Story spoke to, and having a human-centered process as we develop the plan and then execute any sort of mandates that come from that or ideas that can work with the city. And there are really interesting things coming across the country and other cities are doing with unique ways to connect with your community, both in a new digital sense, but of course also with traditional ways to make sure it's an inclusive multi-stakeholder involvement. On the next slide, we are also looking at data-driven decision-making, and there's a lot of great examples across the country on this as well, and we want to make this specific to the city of Elk Grove, building upon the efforts that the city is already doing, as Christopher mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, including sharing open data, not just data sets, but what the data really can mean to its residents, and performance metrics, working on privacy policy and making it very clear how the city is using its data and how it is not using resident data, and informing city planning in a cross-departmental and proactive way. And then finally, inclusive innovation. And this is where a lot of exciting opportunities can land here. And that is where we can seek new ideas for creativity. If there's any opportunity for pilots or new technology to come into the city, I heard from the city manager at the top of this meeting about the adaptive signals, which is very exciting, and other opportunities like that, both in the right of way and just for resident interaction. You can see these examples here of just making infrastructure really interesting and adaptive to resident needs. So those are what we are thinking in some examples of our pillars. So Christopher, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kate. So just looking then back at the next steps, so the feedback we're looking for this evening, are we going in a direction which makes sense, is the right one for Elk Grove in terms of these draft principles? Again, the community engagement, the data-driven decision-making, and our inclusive innovation. Are there other things that we should be looking at or other feedback that the council would like to consider? And that concludes our presentation this evening. We're available for questions and discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for that great presentation. I will open the public comment opportunity first.
And under this item, we didn't receive any prior written comments, and I'm looking at the field of our attendees, and I'm not seeing any hands raised. So that would conclude public comment on item 10.1.
Very good. Then I will close the public comment opportunity and open up for council comments and deliberation. We will start with Council Member Sun.
Thank you, Mayor. Christopher and Story and Kate, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate this endeavor. I think we should always be looking ahead and anticipating what our residents need next. And obviously, there's going to be time needed for implementation. So I'm so glad you're doing this now. Just for me personally, it's a quick way of technology is not a panacea, as you mentioned, but whatever it can do to better enable connectivity of our residents to places, to services, to information, keeping them safe, and making sure that all of that can be done as quickly as possible. I think that's something that we should strive for at a conceptual level. But otherwise, I'm glad to see you're doing outreach to the community. I recognize the challenge of not getting input right now. Maybe, I'm just guessing, but maybe perhaps people aren't really understanding what they're, what the workshop is about. So maybe they're to better communicate that in the future. I guess that's all I would have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Soon. Councilmember Spies.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So in terms of the draft principles, I think they're fine. And to go back a little bit with Councilmember Soon, I get it, right? I'm a software guy, so software and security, right? So I get kind of the fluffy, soft, gooey words that are used to build up or take abstract ideas and start bringing them down into something more concrete. I guess what I would really be looking for at the end of this is not necessarily concrete designs or concrete solutions, but something that a resident could look at and say, okay, this makes sense. This is what we're talking about. Because right now, I mean, again, I get it, but for a lot of people, this is a level of abstraction that like I said, it's like talking to a software engineer for folks. And that may very well be why there isn't a whole lot of participation. I think it's exciting. I think that one of the biggest challenges that we're going to have implementing any solution, technology solution, would definitely be the issues of connectivity with the internet, with high-speed data. There are areas of the city that simply don't have it. So I think this is pretty cool. I would like to know, so the slide went pretty quick. What are the deliverables we expect from this, and what is the timeline for those?
So from a timeline perspective, this will occur over the next several months. So there's certainly a lot of time left to get additional public engagement going. And we are beginning to strategize on how we can do that more effectively. I think with the weather turning, getting warmer, I think we're hoping more people will be out at things like farmers markets, and that'll be a good intercept opportunity to look at. And then certainly with more events beginning to happen, and particularly with the state identifying a rollout date for reopening, we can start looking at opportunities there. In terms of the deliverable, ultimately there is a plan itself. I would agree that the goal is not exclusively like, here is all the exact projects we're going to do, but more of a broader strategy about how we're going to address this at this topic, and how are we going to set ourselves up for success? What's the approach going to be? And that's where the pillars come in to understand that, so that as we evaluate opportunities for new technology or systems, that they really dovetail in with this and become natural evolution. So we're not coming back and having to modify the plan every couple of years. Rather, the thematic components are there. And again, to your point, that the residents can understand the direction that we're going and what we're trying to achieve. So there'll be that plan in and of itself. There's also going to be some guidance we're putting together around the use of data, privacy issues, and that sort of issue. And certainly security plays a big role into that. And I think there'll be something certainly with our information technology group and with the legal folks. We'll be talking more about that internally and strategizing around it. One thing I think is something we'll need to look at is opportunities for security is first and foremost paramount, but we also need the ability to move data between systems easily. So how can we do that in a way that allows us to reduce redundancy of data entry, allows for good understanding of the situation across different platforms, that you can take information from, say, our customer interaction database, where we can say, here's what's going on with calls for street light repair or drainage issues or whatever sort of the field call for services, marry it with the financial, the calls for service, and then the financial information, what's it costing to actually maintain those assets, and do some real analysis to understand, do we have a sort of a systemic issue in what we design and operate, or can we, is it really more of a localized issue that there's some sort of solution there we can look at that can save us the O&M cost long term? So I think those are good sort of cases to look at.
Well, and I think as well, and our conversation is probably, you know, drowning everybody else out. They probably hear us going wonk, wonk, wonk by now. But I think one of the things that's interesting from it is that there are definitely low-tech solutions to be found in the collection of data, right? So one of the things that, you know, is found in a different area is that if you can notice the traffic patterns and where everything, you know, gums up at a certain time, it's entirely possible to have one of the large employers start later, right? Very low-tech solution, right? So I'm excited about this because of that as well. Again, yeah, you brought up the privacy issue. That's certainly a concern, double-edged sword. I don't know if that's intended to be addressed in the final output here, but it certainly would be something good to think about.
Yes.
But anyway, with that, like I said, I think everybody's probably going, it's a Charlie Brown conversation at this point in time. So I'll go back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Council Member Hume.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To pick up on Councilmember Speace's last point there, I won't get too much into the weeds on all of this, simply because it is so much and so lofty to take all of it in and take some time to process. But I first just want to say that, Story, I love the whole thing you have going on there with your background and the lighting and everything else. You look like it's a music video or something. It's just very artistic. Reminds me of Laurie Anderson, if you're old enough to remember who that is. And then the other thing I'd like to say is what a apt pairing of career and name you have. You know, when you think of bellows as something that breathes air into a spark in order to make it a full-blown fire. And the only other example I can think of somebody who had that same coincidence was there was a guy who worked for the County of Sacramento Department of Transportation, and his name was Dusty Rhodes. So just sometimes life is stranger than fiction. But thank you for an amazing report, and it's refreshing to sit back and think big, right? Like you get to do that on potentially a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. But for some of us, just to step back and just sort of ask big questions to explore big answers is fun to do. The draft principles, spot on. Christopher knows me well enough to know like what my bugaboos are and what I'm for and what I get prickly about. And so for me, it's finding that sweet spot between cool and innovative and wastefully expensive. And so, obviously using those draft principles in order to get something that it makes the city a more enjoyable place to live and serve its residents more effectively. And in a, as you said in one of those slides, you get to a read-write situation, right? Where the entire fabric and everything of how the city operates is a living document to some extent. And so I really appreciate that. Great report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I won't drag this on because as Councilmember Spies was saying, it was turning into a Charlie Brown conversation because I'm not a software person by any means. But when she said the bus and knowing when the bus is coming, I said, you know what? I love that app. Here comes the bus, because that's when I know my kids got to run out there because the bus is right around the corner, or when like Amazon's going to drop off my package and they're 10 steps away or 10 stops away. And so, when you talk about better connectivity, I'm in my kids' playroom because that's the best connectivity to the internet that I have here in the entire house for some reason, right? But thank you, Mr. Jordan. I appreciate it, and Story as well too. presentation. I'm a big fan of public and community engagement, and the more we can do, the better we can do and find more ways to do it. I think that's going to be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Similar comments from my council colleagues. So what I will maybe just bring up some new concepts. First of all, I appreciate the draft principles. That proactive community engagement is instrumental for the success of this. And I'm a firm believer in data-driven decision-making because, you know, we just don't want to be going in any direction, that we have data that backs up what we want to do and where we're going to allocate funding, which is very, very important. But, you know, it's like some of my colleagues mentioned, these are big concepts and it's not something maybe relatable to everyone. So as part of that outreach continues to make it more accessible and simplifying some of the branding of it so that it's readily understandable, even though it's going to be complex. But, you know, whatever those buzzwords might be, but I think we'll get more buy-in. I really appreciate the one person who came up with all those comments. That's great. You know, definitely some great feedback that we did get from whoever, I don't know who submitted that. But you know, we want to be able to obviously gather more information and make sure that this is accessible and relatable, adaptable, understandable to the masses. And so sometimes it's using different terminology and just making it, you know, for the everyday person, because it does get lost a little bit in something that's a little hard to attain and maybe comprehend, because not everyone, like Mr. Spies, will be adept at all of the technological innovations and things like that. So I'm somewhere in the middle. So I do appreciate technology, but you know, in terms of accessibility and branding, and we'll get more engagement if they understand what, first of all, just smart city. What does that even mean? Being a smart city. So just making it something that they can relate to, because we want that buy-in. We want the community to be a part of this journey. So I will trust the right staff and experts to help develop that. But I definitely want to be very mindful of getting solid public engagement. And I like that you offered it in the morning and then in the late afternoon, early evening. But you know, the more we can get it to be accessible and understandable. I mean, I would even go so far as trying it out just to get feedback. We have existing committees and commissions and things. They're all residents. So if we can, at least we have a built-in audience of those that can participate and get us at least some of that feedback. You don't need to be an expert in this field. We want community feedback. And we have residents that have already signed up to participate. Maybe we can do something where we incorporate all of them to at least participate in one of the presentations, just to get some more, you know, the idea is to get more feedback and exploring all of our different avenues. So I do see Councilmember Spies has his hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, if I can get a quick go back.
Yeah.
Something I was thinking about, this does speak to, a younger crowd. Perhaps it's an opportunity to get some students from CRC engaged, as well as perhaps some of the Elk Grove Unified School District technology,
yes,
they don't call them centers of excellence, but that may be an opportunity for them to have some engagement. So just something to think about.
Yes, and CRC is looking for more engagement. I actually had a great meeting with them this afternoon, and they're looking for more engagement with the city. So something built in there, but we'll help you with coming up with some ideas. I'm sure all of us have different constituencies that we can expand, but we have some built-in platforms already in the city. But this is a great presentation. I have been looking forward to this for a long time, so thank you. And I still don't, you know, if I were to add a definition, I'm not sure that we would all be on the same page. So it's very, it's big, right? So just try to hone that in, and it's very creative, which is part of the whole of what this program is about, the creativity that goes into it. And that's probably why we can't just kind of fine tune and pinpoint exactly to make it understandable, but we'll get there in a way that's, again, meaningful and tangible for our community to understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish as becoming a smart city. So I just want to thank you for this great presentation. I've looked forward to this for several months.
Thank you all.
Thank you. With that, we will go on to our next presentation.
Our next item will be item 10.2, which is to receive information and consider a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an annexation agreement with Sacramento Regional Transit District to annex the city's transit services and all operational maintenance and administrative functions to SAC-RT. Consider a license agreement as part of that resolution authorizing the SAC-RT's use of the city's corporation yard and execute all necessary amendments, revisions, and or modifications in order to effectuate the annexation agreement's terms and conditions.
All righty, good evening, Mayor Singh Allen and members of the City Council. I just want to confirm you can hear me and see my presentation.
We have audio and visual, Mr. Costa. Please proceed.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening, Mayor Singh Allen, members of the City Council, Mike Costa, the city's transit system manager. The item before you this evening is the culmination of extensive annexation discussions and negotiations that have occurred since 2019. But before I go into details regarding the annexation and license agreements that you are being asked to consider this evening, I would like to provide you with a very brief background and timeline of how we got to this item today. In January of 2005, the city assumed fixed route transit services from the Sacramento Regional Transit District, known as SAC-RT, which was then branded as E-Tran. In July of 2006, the city assumed the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, paratransit services from Paratransit Inc., which was then branded as E-Van. Historically, the city has contracted with a third-party transit contractor to provide the necessary personnel and resources to carry out all of the city's transit service operations and maintenance functions related to E-Tran and E-Van, while the city has still maintained administrative control and oversight over the route scheduling and planning and finances for the service. From January of 2005 through July of 2019, MV Transportation, or MV, contractually operated the E-Tran and E-Van services. In July of 2019, after extensive contract negotiations, SAC-RT became the city's contracted transit provider, subject to the current service agreement that is being implemented today. When approved by the City Council, the current service agreement was intended to provide a time period for the city to consider and evaluate SAC-RT's performance prior to any potential annexation of the city's services into SAC-RT. The service agreement even contains a commitment from the city to consider annexation and begin negotiating in good faith with SAC-RT for annexation before June 30th of 2020 if the city determines that SAC-RT's contract performance within the service agreement's first year exceeds MV's prior year service performance. In January of 2020, 6 months following the start of the city's current service agreement with SAC-RT, the city administered a customer satisfaction survey to the E-Tran and E-Van riders in order to evaluate SAC-RT's performance comparative to MV's prior year service performance. SAC-RT received generally favorable rankings for their service, indicating improvement over MV's prior performance. In addition, within the first year of the service agreement, SAC-RT's contract performance in the areas of staff retention, on-time performance, and general customer service were observed to be improved when compared with MV's prior contract performance. Given these evaluations and observations, the city formally began negotiations with SAC-RT for annexation in March of 2020. Attachments 2 and 3 of this staff report contain the annexation agreement and license agreement for the city's consideration this evening, which were both negotiated in good faith between city and SAC-RT staff. As mentioned by Councilmember Hume earlier this evening, the SAC-RT Board of Directors conditionally approved both of these agreements at their board meeting held this past Monday, along with the administrative fee agreement approved by the City Council under consent item 8.14 this evening. If approved by the City Council tonight, the annexation will become effective on July 1st of 2021, and the license agreement's 8-year term will start concurrently with the July 1st effective date of annexation. The license agreement is necessary for SAC-RT's continued use of the city's corporation yard in order to support the transit services provided to the city after annexation. Additionally, following annexation, SAC-RT will be solely responsible for all administrative oversight, service implementation, operations, and financial management of the city's E-Tran and E-Van services. And all of the city's administrative control over the transit service planning and funding will cease, with some limited exceptions provided for in the annexation agreement. If approved this evening, the terms and provisions contained within the annexation and license agreements will supersede all current agreements and contracts that the city has with SAC-RT upon the effective date of annexation. Before I go into some further details regarding some of the key terms and conditions for both the annexation and license agreements, I would like to briefly highlight some of the potential benefits that could be afforded to the city's transit riders upon annexation with SAC-RT. One of the greatest immediate benefits to the city's ADA paratransit riders is the one-seat ride option that riders will have upon annexation, which will eliminate the current requirement for these riders to transfer from the city's eVan paratransit service to SAC-RT's Go paratransit service when leaving the city's jurisdictional boundaries, and vice versa. This is something that many of the city council members desired before the city even initiated the current contracted services agreement with SAC-RT. In addition to this direct benefit, there will be a greater opportunity for regional funding collaboration and joint partnerships between city, SAC-RT, and other jurisdictions within SAC-RT's service area for large-scale competitive funding and more opportunities for coordinated fixed route and microtransit services within the service area that the city would become a part of after annexation. There will also be some administrative and operational efficiencies gained by having all transit service and support functions consolidated under SAC-RT's existing administrative structure versus the city's current contracted services model. And now I'd like to go over some of the major terms and conditions contained within the annexation agreement, starting with the 4-year service commitment. Under this service commitment, SAC-RT cannot make any major service changes and/or service reductions within the first 4 years following the effective date of annexation, except in defined emergency event cases and/or in cases reviewed and approved by the city, which the city can consider based on specific provisions contained within the annexation agreement. SAC-RT will also be required to satisfy payment of the city's approximately $3.6 million negative transit fund balance through the license fee payment terms established in both the annexation agreement and accompanying license agreement. Beginning in fiscal year 22, SAC-RT will be able to claim and collect all future federal and state funding allocations and passenger fare revenues received for the city's transit services. The city will continue to have the ability to pay for all operational expenses accrued through June 30th of 2021 and any necessary post-annexation operational expenses using existing revenue sources before releasing any unspent funds to SAC-RT after annexation. Although it is not anticipated, if additional funding is needed by the city to cover eligible operational transit expenses post-annexation, then the city can request funding from SAC-RT. However, this excludes funding requested for the transit liaison position, which is already established in the administrative fee agreement approved by council under consent item 8.14 this evening, and the city's cost allocation and internal service charge programs. The city's fare structure and fare media being the different types of fares paid by passengers currently on eTran and eVan, will remain unchanged for 6 months after annexation. Following this period, SAC-RT will be able to make changes to the fares and fare media for transit services provided to the city in order to bring them in conformance with SAC-RT's existing fare structure and media used throughout their service area. All transit buses, support vehicles, equipment, tools, spare parts, bus stop signage, and shelter assets will be transferred to SAC-RT's ownership on July 1st. Upon the effective date of annexation, SAC-RT will become liable for these assets and will have the responsibility to maintain, replace, and clean the assets according to the requirements established in the annexation agreement. All customer service and ADA paratransit service eligibility functions will transfer to SAC-RT upon annexation. Another important provision within the annexation agreement is that SAC-RT will endeavor to commit a portion of any future sales tax measure funding received towards expanded city transit service operations and capital improvement. These include bus rapid transit and/or express bus corridors and service improvements and light rail extension into Elk Grove. Upon the effective date of annexation, the city and SAC-RT will further create a transit rider and stakeholder task force to assist with customer performance matters, planning, outreach efforts, and addressing customer service complaints post-annexation. And lastly, approval of this annexation agreement is not anticipated to result in the loss of employment for any city staff members that are currently administering the city's transit service function. And now I'd like to briefly provide an overview of the license agreement, which, if approved by City Council tonight, will become effective on July 1st, 2021, concurrent with the effective date of annexation. The license agreement term will be for a period of 8 years in which the city cannot terminate the license agreement for at least the first 6 years of this term. The license agreement defines specific responsibilities for SAC-RT to pay for both shared and direct expenses pertaining to utilities and maintenance and repair functions within both the exclusive use and common areas of the city's corporation yard used by SAC-RT. SAC-RT's payment of these operational expenses will not be used to satisfy the negative transit fund balance payment, which must be fully paid through the license fee payment, regardless if the license agreement is terminated before the 8-year term ends. An alternate action tonight is for the City Council to not approve the annexation and/or license agreement this evening and direct staff to continue contracted service operations with either SAC-RT or another third-party contractor. However, staff does not recommend this action at this time, considering the City Council's previously stated goal and intent to annex into SAC-RT following the implementation of the current service agreement. Additionally, the license agreement must be approved tonight concurrent with the annexation agreement in order for SAC-RT to continue utilizing the city's corp yard and effectively operate and administer transit services for the city following annexation. For reasons stated in previous portions of this presentation, the city does not anticipate any negative fiscal impacts to the city's general fund resulting from the annexation of the city's transit services and operations into SAC-RT. Specific terms and provisions are established within the annexation agreement, license agreement, and administrative fee agreement that was previously approved to address all anticipated pre- and post-annexation expenses following approval of this action this evening for annexation. With all of that being said, staff recommends that the City Council authorize the city manager to execute the annexation agreement, the license agreement, and all other necessary budget and financial actions and agreements needed to effectuate the annexation of the city's transit services into SAC-RT. And with that, this concludes my presentation. Both myself and SAC-RT staff are available should the City Council have any further questions regarding this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for your presentation. I will open up the public comment opportunity.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members, we did receive one written comment that was distributed to the full council and staff prior to the meeting. And then I do believe we have a speaker who has signed up to speak tonight. If I can ask staff to take down the share screen function so that I can share the screen for the speaker timer.
Mike Barbaum, you may go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here on item 10.2. So let me start out by saying it this way. Reunited, and it feels so good. But that might be saying it a little bit lightly. It took a long time and a lot of work and a lot of effort to get to this point that we are here this evening. Unlike the recent annexations of the city of Folsom and the city of Citrus Heights, getting to tonight's annexation had a lot of history with it. The very first city council, council members Sherman, Soares, Leary, Cooper, and Briggs. With them, it felt like Steve Perry and Journey, that they wanted their separate ways worlds apart from being a regional partner. Tonight, we all have the opportunity to reverse the actions of nearly a couple of decades ago and truly put regional back into regional transit for the city of Elk Grove. And so with that, and to Councilmember Wynn's point earlier, people will be really glad when they hear, "Here comes the bus." and I say it's all right. And this is going to be a great partnership to come. As you see on page 4 of the staff report, there are the 7 bullet points that are the very convincing sales points that staff adequately put together for this item. And so I want to say in closing for this item tonight, the only way it had to be was RT for Elk Grove and Elk Grove for RT. And with that, the 2 parties will be, like Flo and Eddie of the Turtles said, so happy together. Madam Mayor, I conclude my comments and I'd like to honorably move the item this evening.
Thank you for your passionate comments, Mr. Barnbaum. Really appreciate it. Any other public comments?
And I believe that would conclude our commenters on item 10.2.
Okay, then I will close the public comment opportunity and open it up to council. Let's start with Councilmember Hume.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for anyone that didn't catch Mr. Barnbaum's musical reference in the middle there, it was "Here comes the bus, do 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 do," and I say it'll be all right. I don't want to say too much about the overall agreement or annexation, so as not to poison the well for your and my colleagues' comments. Obviously, I'm a little closer to this issue than others, but I do want to say just a couple of things. Is we can beat the dead horse on whether or not this was a worthwhile experiment to begin with, but I think that it can be agreed that the vision originally set out and the execution thereof never really saw eye to eye. And I do believe, whether it has to do with Mr. Costa's involvement, which I will attest to in a minute, but I think our current iteration of E-Tran is functioning about as well as it ever has in the city. So that being said, if you go back and look at some of those benefits that were outlined, the number one thing for me is twofold. One, it's for the people who most need transit as a lifeline, for them to be able to get onto one vehicle and go wherever they need to go. That is of paramount importance, and I think should be placed above all other considerations. And the second is that in order for shared transit to work efficiently, there shouldn't have to be a lot of transfers, and particularly not if you're going from one mode to another. So obviously going from a bus to a light rail, from a light rail to a heavy rail, you need to change because you're changing the literal vehicle of operation. But if you have to take our bus to get to another bus, to get to a light rail, to do what, people aren't going to do it. And so I hold out hope that I think this will be a new era of regionalism that will make transit a viable option and get people out of their cars and off the clogged freeways. Now, to the actual process, I just want to say this, because obviously I saw both sides of it being on both boards, and would get briefings from both agencies. I just want to say, and I cannot sing their praises loud enough, Mike Costa and Jason Behrman did the yeoman's share of standing up for Elk Grove citizens, Elk Grove riders, Elk Grove taxpayers. The low-hanging fruit, the easiest path of least resistance was to just fold and punt it and say it's not our problem and we don't have to deal with it anymore. But they recognized that, in every negotiation there is a trust but verify component. And I think that was the spirit of how they went into these negotiations, how they stood up for our riders and our taxpayers, and basically said, look, we know you do a great job, RT, but we have to make sure that we're not going to be the sacrificial lamb once we enter into this agreement. And RT, after sharpening their pencils and much consternation, and to their credit and benefit, they came around and said that's a reasonable request and made it happen. So I just, again, want to say kudos to Mike and to Jason, just for really taking their roles and responsibilities seriously and putting Elk Grove at the top of their priority. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Excellent comments. Thank you, Councilmember Hume. Councilmember Suen.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate those comments, Councilmember Hume. I am not surprised at all that Mike and Jason did such a great job. On that note, Mike, I'm certainly glad to hear, that no city employees will, be sacrificed during all this. That was very good news to read that in the report as well. I do think, regardless of what the vision was, I think if you look at today's environment where you have an RT that's functioning much better than it was back then, under its new leadership and the economies of scale, where our city can, save money in that regard by being in the RT's fold. And still, again, through Mike and Jason's work and Councilmember Hume and Vice Mayor Wynn's representation, we're going to get, we're expecting through this agreement to get a fair deal that ensures continuity of service to our residents so that they can rely on this mode of transportation. And something that I'm extremely passionate about, especially the extension of the light rail into the city boundaries, because as I do that commute, go through that area each day, I drive, on occasion, I drive by Franklin Station, I drive by Meadowview Station, and getting there is, it's horrible. And so that to the comment about transferring modes, why spend half an hour in your car just to get 1.5 miles and then have to transfer and then try to jump on a light rail at that point? It's and then it kind of breaks up at that point too. So, you just say, hey, forget it. I'm just going to keep going now, because it kind of frees up when you get there. So I'm hopeful that, again, being in that fold, that they'll be able to capitalize on the regional grants at the federal and state level that will accelerate when we can actually get a light rail station within the city boundaries. And also I know our commuter buses are very important to our residents. And so I'm glad to hear that, for at least 4 years, or the first 4 years, they are not able to change that service. So again, getting back to continuity of service, people's expectations will still be maintained through that. So great work to all of you and the entire staff, and look forward to getting this adopted. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Suen. Councilmember Spies.
Yes, thanks. I guess my question is, I'm glad to see that there's protection for the 4 years in terms of route changes and cancellations. Now, after 4 years, if the board of SAC RT, of which we of course are members, right, or will be members in a different representation, but in the event that if route changes or cancellations occur that the city of Elk Grove is not comfortable with, right? Say, for instance, there was a line that might have been underutilized or underused, but there may be folks who need that, right? What recourse do we have? How do we solve that problem? How do we reconcile what we want versus what SAC RT may want?
I think I can take a stab at this one, Councilmember Spies, to address your question. There are certain provisions in the annexation agreement that do still require SAC RT following that 4-year period to provide transit service levels commensurate with the funding that we would otherwise receive to provide transit services for the city of Elk Grove. And so that does kind of maintain some obligation for SAC RT to, at least if they're getting a certain amount of funding that we get today or more, they should be providing commensurate service level that we see today. Secondly, there will be the transit liaison position that continues to coordinate and work very closely with SAC-RT following the 4-year service commitment period. And that will be kind of the staff liaison to work with SAC-RT and look at any potential large-scale service changes. But at the end of the day, after that 4-year service commitment, there will be it will still be up to the discretion of the SAC-RT board to ultimately approve the service adjustments, whether they be reductions or changes to service. And of course, we are a member of that board, but it would be subject to their ultimate authority. I don't know if John has any additional things to say on that one.
Nothing further. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it just highlights the need to continue to participate as regional partners, right? The SAC-RT board becomes even more important for us, and participating on a regional level becomes more important, because I'd hate to wind up on the bad side of a discussion years down the road, of course. But okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Vice Mayor Nguyen?
Thank you, ma'am. I won't repeat everything that's said. I agree everything with what Councilmember Hume and Soon and Spiza said. I really excited to be a part of the vote on this. It's really important to me. I wanted to see this happen, and definitely want to thank Mr. Costa and Mr. Bierman, as exactly what Councilmember Hume was saying, and really standing up for our community. I think this is going to be a really good move for our city, for our community, for the region. And I'm just excited that we were able to get through this and to be a part of this and be a part of this process. I also want to thank Councilmember Hume for playing a great role in being both a council member and a board member for RT as well too. And I know we've got some RT folks on here, and I want to thank them for this whole process as well. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Excellent comments from my colleagues. For me, the highlights, of course, ending the para-transit transfers, I think is right up there on the top of the list, just like Councilmember Hume mentioned. I appreciate that there's no major service changes. The agreement and the details look solid. I really appreciate that there is no city staff that will lose employment. I think that is so important. And the fact that there is no negative fiscal impact, that is also critical. And as we continue providing services, going back historically of why the previous council would have chosen the path that they did. I mean, if we go back historically, we were celebrating cityhood. We wanted to go it alone. And so without putting so much fault of some of the previous decisions, I can understand the mindset of we're now a city, let's try to do things our way. But we are in a different place now. The importance of regionalism is critical. As the second largest city in Sacramento County, we need to be working with our regional partners. It improves our city. So we are definitely in a different space, in a different time now. And again, connecting to the region, I think is so important, not only as a city, but for our residents as we utilize these services. Outside of COVID, the second top item that I heard was our traffic congestion. And this is something that is going to definitely work towards alleviating some of those concerns, particularly as we bring in light rail and truly connect to our greater region. So I'm very excited about this, and I think it's definitely long overdue and a step in the right direction. Thank you for your excellent presentation, and thank you, Mike and Jason, for all of your hard work and leading our city and looking out for the best interest of the residents of Elk Grove. All right. With that, I will entertain a motion.
I don't have an agenda in front of me. Is there anything particular I need to read, or can I just move staff's recommendation?
You can move staff recommendation authorizing maybe item 1, 2, and 3. Can we do it like that?
Indeed, for the resolution of the item, you can just move staff recommendation for the resolution.
Perfect.
Second.
Oh, you can have it, Councilmember Soon.
Okay, you can have it. I don't care. It's okay.
We have a motion and enthusiastic seconds.
And with that, we'll move towards that roll call vote, and I will start with Councilmember Spies.
Yes.
Councilmember Hume.
Aye.
Councilmember Suen.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Nguyen.
Aye.
And Mayor Singh Allen.
Enthusiastic aye, yes.
And with that, the resolution of item 10.2 will pass by 5-0 vote.
Excellent, thank you. Congratulations.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just before moving on quick, if I could just say one thing really quickly. I appreciate the council's support of this item throughout this whole thing. And I thought it'd be remiss if I didn't just thank a few other individuals, certainly Councilmember Human, Vice Mayor Nguyen in their efforts. Mike Costa, who's led this whole thing, really has just done an amazing job and really been surrounded by other team members. Suzanne Kennedy, our Assistant City Attorney, Doug Scott, and really others here on the team as well. So it's really been great. We look forward to the partnership with our team moving forward. So great day for the city of Elk Grove.
Absolutely. Congratulations. All right, we will move on to our next item.
And that next item will be 10.3, the presentation of the Elk Grove Police Department's 2020 annual report.
Excellent. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening. All right, we've got a good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I'm Tim Albright, your Chief of Police. I'm here tonight to present the Elk Grove Police Department's 2020 annual report. I will keep this relatively short out of deference to the fact that we will be posting our annual report to our website and our social media platforms in the morning. And it is 37 pages of amazing work, although I won't be covering all of that tonight. But it will be up first thing in the morning for those in the audience that are listening. But before I move forward with my presentation, I just wanted to take a moment to really express my appreciation to our city manager, Mr. Behrman, mayor, vice mayor, council members, and really our amazing community that supports us consistently. And it's certainly not lost upon any of us, that level of support, and certainly not something we take for granted. And my hope is as you see this annual report this evening, that you'll see that support reflected in the work done by our amazing staff. I'll start with just an organizational overview, if you will, our structure, our command staff, and the areas in which they oversee. You'll see Assistant Chief Bobby Davis, who's highlighted at the top of that, and I'll talk a little bit more about his leadership and what he brings to the organization. He's a new hire here in 2020, and just an incredible partner for me. I want to start with support services, and as Mr. Behrman mentioned previously, this is National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, and we are celebrating our dispatch, our unsung heroes, those dispatchers who bring calm to chaos with regularity. They're that calm voice on the other end of the phone, and they do an incredible job. And Mr. Behrman talked a little bit about some of the numbers, but to reflect on 140,000 calls that they took in 2020, and with 95% of those being answered in the first 15 seconds, it's an amazing accomplishment, and certainly a testament to their work ethic and dedication to the organization and the community. Our records division, again, unsung heroes. You can see the amount of report transactions that take place. They're a vital part of our criminal justice system to really get reports to the courts, to the district attorney's office, to victims of crimes. They work tirelessly to achieve that and do it with a great deal of professionalism. And lastly, within our support services, our property and evidence bureau, as you can see, they are responsible for every piece of evidence that enters into the police department. Every piece of evidence that's collected at a crime scene, found property, all comes to the police department, runs through a series of intake procedures, is packaging, cataloged, and then stored, and eventually released in some way. And in 2020, that they would have over 7,000 items of evidence. It's not a large staff in property and evidence, but they do an absolutely amazing job. Our community outreach, I know that all of our conversations are really overarched with what the COVID pandemic did for us or prevented us from doing perhaps. And I'm really proud of our community-oriented policing unit. This is our homeless outreach team and the POP unit themselves, but they really worked hard in this pandemic to connect genuinely with members of our community. You can see some of their statistics, if you will, still connecting with our neighborhood watch groups, really were creative in connecting with the Citizens Academies and keeping those going even in a virtual environment. You heard earlier the efforts of Sarah Brauntrager and our community-oriented policing, our homeless outreach team, and some of the wonderful things that they have embarked upon recently. And one that I'm really proud of, and I know they're really proud of, and that's the 227 Toy Project recipients. I know there's a lot of people on this call who are involved in that project, and to see those, the youth in our community be cared for in a way that's meaningful for them. And certainly in a year where it was abnormal, that brought a lot of pride to our organization, a lot of smiles to the staff here, and certainly smiles on the recipient end of that. So kudos to our group. This I want to spend a little bit of time, if you don't mind, on our hiring and demographics page. I mentioned at the top end, Assistant Chief Bobby Davis, who was really, after 25 years at another agency, decided to join our organization. I'll tell you, that's probably the best move I will have ever made as a chief of police, because he's an amazing leader, a great partner for me to lead this organization and provide, our community with what they need. And I'm honored to work beside him. I know several of you have met him. And again, he's looking forward as we begin to thaw here from restrictions to meeting more of our community and certainly city staff. This was 2020, an opportunity not unlike other years for us to really diversify our staff, to really get to mirror our community as best we can. And we've done some really unique things to reach groups that otherwise we might not reach, and to really work hard to bring that diversity of thought, diversity of experience into our organization. I would be remiss if I didn't point out at the bottom of our presentation here, our values. These are values that we ascribe to here in the police department. And they're not just words, they're on a PowerPoint or on a wall or at the bottom of a piece of stationery, but they're words that we live by. We anchor our activities to those values. And you'll notice that smack dab in the middle of that is diversity and the importance of that for us. In 2020, I was proud to, by virtue of council support and the support of our city manager, to hire 25 people into the organization. You see some of the names highlighted as new hires on the second page there. We had a fair amount of attrition, as you also see the number of retirements, 9 this year. So certainly filling some of the vacancies, and filling vacancies through attrition allowed us to hire 25 really talented people into the organization. One of the best things you can do as a police chief is to bring great people who are well-oriented to want to serve this community and the organization. And then we had the opportunity to promote 6 people, as you see as well, into leadership roles in the organization. We talked a little bit about how we want to attract and gain a workforce that really is reflective of our community. And I want to share a couple of the things that we are doing to achieve that. One, we have recently partnered with Sac State, the Public Policy Division, to uncover better practices to not only attract, but to advance our female candidates within the organization. That's something really important for us, and we're looking to gain some different perspectives as to how to do that even better than we're already doing. This year we attended the Greater Sacramento Urban League Diversity Job Fair, something we attend annually. We participated in the Sac State MILE program, mentoring in law enforcement. As an adjunct faculty at Sac State, I began that program about 7 years ago, and it's really an opportunity for us to marry law enforcement leadership with graduating seniors to help demystify the profession and provide a pathway into law enforcement in sworn and professional roles. And also our links to law enforcement, something we've been involved with for a long time, something we're really proud of, and really workshops, mentoring, recruiting, helping again to demystify the law enforcement profession and provide a runway to hires. So we partner with the Greater Sacramento Urban League, Asian Resources, as you know, and La Familia to reach some of those groups. and provide those mentoring opportunities. Spend just a little bit of time here. By the way, I only have 9 slides, so this won't take too terribly long, but I want to talk about crime, something that's certainly important for all of us as a resident in this community. That's something that concerns me as a resident as well, but certainly as a police chief. And I will say that in 2020, you'll see that the chart at the very top, 2020 was relatively flat as far as any increases or decreases that are that stand out, with the exception of the notable changes. If you'll direct your attention to the bottom of the page, our robberies are at a 5-year low. So from 2019 to 2020, they were down nearly 18%. That's a big number for robbery, which is considered a violent crime by FBI standards. Our property crime, also during that same time period, is down nearly 13%. And then violent crime, one we're really proud of, one we've worked really hard toward over the 5-year period of 2015 through 2020, is down almost 32%. We still have work to do. We don't rest on great statistics. We are continually looking for, new entrepreneurial ways of addressing crime challenges in the city, but that is certainly one that are 3 notable crime trends that we're very proud of. Those don't happen by accident. Frankly, this council's willingness to fund our real-time information center, you heard a little bit about that from the city manager previously, and I'll speak a little bit more about that in a moment. But really, that has served as a platform to equip our staff with useful tools to help in driving down crime. Also, an approach to intelligence-led policing or data-led. Madam Mayor, as you alluded to earlier, the importance of decisions that are led by data, using intelligence-led policing to really collate all of our resources to focus on not only crime, but quality of life issues within our community, and do so in a coordinated manner. And frankly, none of that occurs unless we have the dedicated and professional staff that we have. And we have, as you know, incredible people here who are absolutely dedicated to this organization and this community. If we go to the second page there, I want to talk briefly about training and how that perhaps parlays into the complaints that you'll see down at the bottom. So our staff is fortunate, again, through the funding of our organization, to enjoy training at a very high level, that we would target training to meet the needs not only that are mandated by law, but really that help to grow our employees to better understand their roles and to better connect with our diverse community. So in addition to the mandated training that's a part of a law enforcement professional's walk, we exceed the California Post standards for several areas, and I want to talk a little bit about those. We exceed those in racial and cultural diversity, cultural competence, racial profiling, procedural justice, implicit bias, race and gender equity. We have our managers who are involved in GARE, which is Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And we continue as leaders in the organization to really talk about, I brought it up previously, at the bottom of the slide, our values, what they represent, and how we turn those words into action, how we get our people to understand, the importance of those, that our community supports those, and that we would run all of our actions, activities, decisions through the prism of our value system. A new training that we recently brought forward, which I'm really proud of our staff for really thinking in an innovative way, is called Stress Inoculation Scenario-Based Training. That's a mouthful. But essentially that is training wherein we put our uniformed staff into stressful situations wherein they make decisions and they really have to think about 4 core things: de-escalation, tactical communication, how they communicate with their peers, with the person at the other end that they might be engaging with, thinking about the duty to intervene, and then the moral, ethical, and legal responsibilities of the actions. So, it's I won't say it's easy, but it's, the classroom-based curriculum, when we talk about how to engage in these encounters, is one thing. but to put yourself into a stressful situation and learn from those experiences, create the muscle memory, the mental model, if you will, to perform in real life situations. We've really seen some really good results from that. And then lastly, on this page, the complaints, both the internal and external complaints. You'll notice there, first of all, my preference, as I'm sure yours, would be that there would be 0 complaints. Frankly, with 66,000 interactions that we have in a calendar year, that's difficult to achieve. But I'm very proud of our staff that in 2020, in that calendar year, we had 13 complaints. And you'll see the footnote at the bottom there that's the lowest number of complaints that we have had in 5 years. Again, a testament to the professionalism, a testament to the marriage of thoughts to our value system, and really a commitment to what those values mean. You heard previously about the Real-Time Information Center. At the bottom, you see our mobile command center, really a real-time information center on wheels that allows us to get to various scenes. We utilized it with 2 at-risk missing juveniles, young juveniles, over about a 20-hour period. That resolved, thankfully, without injury, and we were able to locate them. But the mobile command center was incredibly helpful in aiding that effort. But our talented staff in the Real-Time Information Center, from our IT folks, Chris Hill specifically, who brought the vision of the Real-Time Information Center, to our supervisor, Jamie Hudson, who really brought life to what the Real-Time Information Center was and really has morphed into through the pandemic and through some of the challenges. It's a wonderful, wonderful program that really serves to provide a higher level of safety for our staff, a higher level of safety for our community. And I believe that it has played a significant role in driving down the crime. It has received, as you know, the award that the city manager spoke to previously. This is the 2021 California Police Chiefs Association in conjunction with Motorola, and it's the Excellence in Technology Innovation Award. There's only one handed out every year. So of the 355 police departments in California, we were awarded that with some very, very stiff competition. So again, so proud of our city staff, our planning and engineering staff who brought that to fruition, and the vision and the execution of the RTIC as it stands today. It also received 2 additional awards: Outstanding Community Improvement Project of the Year by the American Society of Civil Engineers, and the Project of the Year in Structures by the American Public Works Association. So kudos, that was truly a citywide effort to get it to where it is. As we come in for a landing here, I want to talk about 2 other important areas of our organization. Animal services. And again, Mr. Behrman spoke a little bit about some of the numbers. I won't repeat those. But what I will bring up is, again, it is National Animal Care and Control Officer Appreciation Week. So we honor their great work, recognizing the numbers that you see here under the 2020 stats page. This was done in a time where, frankly, they had to reinvent the wheel, where animals would continue to come in, but the ability to let the public in to adopt animals was problematic. And so they were innovative in their approach. They leveraged social media and really did an amazing job. And even in that time, you can see the number of animals that were microchipped or vaccinated, or the licenses that were issued that helps to get those animals home when lost. But I want to provide this number, in that 58% of our stray dogs were returned to their rightful owner, and that's 28% higher than the national average, 28% higher even in non-COVID years. So our staff is doing a really, really good job. We have a young and engaged staff, and as I asked them, how you achieve those numbers, they mine social media. If they have a dog, they're looking at pictures, they're looking for any indication, they're posting on various sites, they're doing the research to try and bring that animal home. And then lastly, our volunteers. You heard that their volunteer time in our vaccination clinics, at the food bank, at other community-based organizations, in our Great Plates Delivered program. They, even in times where they couldn't be in the building by virtue of the restrictions, they found ways to to contribute to our community. And we are incredibly blessed to have such dedicated volunteers. And I'll be honest, they're knocking on the door continually, wanting to come back. So I'm excited to announce that next week, as Mr. Behrman mentioned, is Volunteer Appreciation Week. And we are going to use that as our kickoff for bringing our volunteers back into the police department, back into City Hall, that they might begin to serve their community again. Again, we're taking the proper precautions. You know, their health and safety is paramount to us. And so for those who are interested in coming back, and there's a lot of them, we're looking forward to welcoming them back next week. So certainly looking forward. And my last slide here is just a couple of the photographs that are reflective of our community engagement as best we could in this particular time. I'd like if you would direct your attention to Jennifer Ng, who is our equipment technician. She's behind a sewing machine there, wearing a yellow sweater on the left side. And Jennifer, within moments of understanding what the mask mandate was about, I think she probably worked 72 hours straight as a former seamstress, sewing masks and issuing those to our staff. This was before masks were widely available, but her passion is her community, and her passion was getting us outfitted that we might be able to continue to serve our community in a safe manner. So kudos to Jennifer. That's one example reflective of dedicated professionals that make up this organization. On the right side is our public information office. You know, as we attempt to connect in new and innovative ways, certainly social media is one of those platforms wherein we can reach a population that otherwise we might not reach through a public meeting or, you know, an email. As you can see, the number of followers that we had last year and that we increased to where we stand currently, some pretty significant upticks in the number of followers. And with each of those follows is an opportunity for interaction. So certainly proud of our public information office and their outreach, understanding the method in which we can utilize to connect more genuinely. And with that, that concludes my presentation. So following public comment, I am certainly available for any questions, and I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to share just a little bit about what our organization has been up to the last year.
Thank you, Chief. I will go ahead and open the public comment opportunity.
And for item 10.3, no written comments were received prior to the meeting. And as I look at our attendees in the crowd, I am not seeing any raised hand functions. So I will say that we have concluded the public comment for item 10.3.
All right, then I will go ahead and close the public comment opportunity and open it up for council comments. We will start with Councilmember Spies.
All right, I get to start. Yeah, so this is another one of those topics that I could probably yam on about for the next hour, but I'm gonna try to keep it as short as I can. Volunteers are really the lifeblood of a community. They help fill in the gaps where other things can't. I want to make sure that I say thanks so much to the VIPs and to the community ambassadors, but also as well, and I'm sure you had no intention to leave them off. You just had to abbreviate it as much as possible. But the Police Chiefs Community Advisory Board, the work that they do in helping to connect to the community and through the different communities of interest, it is fantastic. The amount of time that they give, the advice and the outreach that they do is fantastic. And so I want to make sure I bring them up. You know, what's interesting is, so last summer I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people. And it was kind of interesting because a lot of times some of them might say something like, well, you know what? Police need to have de-escalation training techniques. And I say, you know, you're right. I agree. And guess what? We have, I think, 2 officers who are trained in that, train the trainer, and then they train the others, right? And then, you know, they may say something like, you know what, we need to have, I'll think of it here in a second, mental health services from the community embedded with the police. And I say, you know what, absolutely, you're right. And guess what? We got that too, right? The list was long, right? And the things that they would ask for. And what's important is to know that the residents of Elk Grove have a very high level of demand
for excellence. And what's great to be able to tell folks is, look, that level that you're expecting, we give it to you. And oh, by the way, that's not enough. And our police department recognizes that. So they not only meet that excellence, but they're continuing to strive to do even better because they're committed to our community. And so I won't go on longer because, like I said, I can go on way longer. But thank you so much, Chief. Please thank all of the men and the women of the, whether they're badged, non-badged, whether they're in communications or the Arctic or wherever they are. You have a fantastic organization, and thank you so much.
I agree, and thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember Spies. Councilmember Hume.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, in the interest of time, I'll agree with Councilmember Spies. I can't possibly prattle on as long as the amount of content in that report and how I feel about this department deserves. So I'll just touch on a couple of things very quickly. And that is, when you looked at those crime statistics page, we are blessed that Elk Grove generally is a very, very safe city. And I tell people there are only two kinds of criminals within the city of Elk Grove: those who have been caught and those that are about to be. And that holds true. I mean, it's amazing. I no sooner get the chance to read the initial email or text about an incident, and I'm already getting the follow-up that either the person's been discovered, the person's been arrested, or the situation's been resolved. But I want to really touch on something that I think is important to note, given the context of kind of what's going on in the world, and I certainly people can sympathize and empathize with the fact that really being a police officer is tough in the best of circumstances. And with what's going on right now, I mean, it's a special type of person that is still able to get up and strap on the badge in the morning and go out and serve their community with the best of intentions. And that's the piece that I want to focus on. Is I've said this, and I think I said it back when we were looking at promoting you, Chief, and that is that every iteration of chief in the Elk Grove Police Department, I believe, just like they say friends come into your life for a time, a reason, or a season. I think every chief that we've had has served the department with a particular set of expertise and a particular viewpoint and strength that was needed for that department at that time. And I just want to say, Chief, that I think that you embody the empathy, compassion, strong heart, and good intention that I have witnessed firsthand from so many of the men and women that serve the department in all of the facets that you highlighted in that report. And so I commend you. I commend your department, and Godspeed and God bless, and keep doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember Hume. Councilmember Sun.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll also try to keep this brief. Chief, I just want to thank you and your men and women for your service to our community. The data is abundantly clear as you show the decrease in violent crimes and robberies. But, as was alluded to earlier by my colleagues, in this climate, your profession, we demand, higher accountability, more training, and, you're doing that. And you're not just begrudgingly doing it, your heart's in the right place. You have the words down on paper, but you're investing in the training, and you're implementing, as it shows that the increase on social media and so many compliments that we see. We are extremely blessed as a community to have the relationship with our police department that all of us do in this community. And it is a two-way street. And, you and your organization are definitely holding up your end of the bargain in that front. And we will continue to support you. The public, I think I speak for all the public as, that we all stand behind you as well. And we appreciate what you guys do each and every day. I wanted to mention the pandemic. you guys were out there, the VIPs, our animal shelter folks. Everybody was out there, on the front lines, providing the service despite the pandemic. And so we greatly appreciate that as well. So congratulations on a successful year, and I look forward to more good years to come.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Suen. Vice Mayor Nguyen.
I won't repeat everything that is said, only because I already knew a lot of this stuff. I'm married into the family, and so I have a really biased opinion. Everything everybody said, I agree with my entire colleague. I'm very blessed to have a husband that works with this department and to work directly under your leadership, Chief, and the Assistant Chief Bobby Davis, who I've known for many years. And I love the community collaboration. I love everything that you talked about. And I know all of that to be true and more. I know you only touched the surface of it. And I know there's so much more that the department does that you couldn't share because we only, have a couple of hours here. And, I'm really grateful that he gets to work under your leadership and under Assistant Chief Bobby Davis's leadership and to be a part of this department here. So thank you for everything. Thank you for your leadership, for guiding this department, and for guiding our city as well too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Well, I will repeat what others have said because you didn't hear it from me yet. That there's strength in having some things repeated. And first and foremost, I think, in the slides that you did share, I really appreciate that you focused on the Professional Standards Bureau and the focus on the training, the use of force, and particular emphasis, as you mentioned, with race, equity, implicit bias, so important. And I already know that you do this work, you live and breathe this. And as a graduate of the Arbinger training, I know that, you see the humanity, as we learn through that training, to see the humanity in everyone. And you bring that mindset to the department. I always wondered, with our former chief's retirement, those are some big shoes to fill. But did you step up and fill those shoes? You really are here at the right place at the right time. And I think Councilmember Hume mentioned that. But I really want to thank you for being mindful of what's happening in the world and being proactive in your approach. It takes that sense of responsibility that a true leader recognizes, that to be proactive and not reactive. And I think that is so critical in true leadership, and you embody that, sir. So thank you for what you do. And with COVID coming to an end here, hopefully soon, and being vaccinated myself, I personally am looking forward to the ride-alongs. That is something that I was looking forward to doing when I started my term here as mayor. And now that we're starting to reopen and letting volunteers in, that's something that I'll be working with you, because I think it's important for all of us. I know I'm talking to previous council members who did participate in those ride-alongs. It is eye-opening experience. And that is something that I value, and I want to be able to do that. I did that with our school resource officers as a school board trustee to really get a better understanding of what it's like, even in a small measurement. So I look forward to scheduling those and being a part of that. But great presentation. And I also want to do a shout out. The department went above and beyond mentoring one of our former graduates from Cosumnes Oaks High School, a young man named Jalen. And he was involved in a horrific car accident that nearly cost his life. And he's a dear friend of our family, my son's friend, graduated in 2018. And the love and support that you provided him did not go unnoticed. That there's a lot of us who saw what you did for that family and for him specifically. And I just wanted to thank everyone for that. It really helped him quite a bit. And he still talks about it. So thank you for all of that. And great work with the Citizens Advisory Committee. I think that is something that we don't really broadcast as much as we should, but those are your great sets of eyes and ears and a connection back to the community, which is so important to have that relationship. And so I just think that, and I know that Councilmember Spies mentioned that great collaboration. So just real proud of all the work that you're doing. Thank you for the presentation. And I encourage everyone listening to read the full report as it's available. and hopefully you will see some of the great work that the department is doing. And if there are areas of any gaps, you know, we're all lifelong learners. I consider myself a lifelong learner. And if there's any areas of improvement, I know that you are open to receiving any input and information. So I encourage anybody to share information and input as you see fit. But let's continue and build on the great work that we've started. Thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
All right. With that, we'll go on to our next item.
And that will advance us to item 10.5, which is to receive a presentation on a proposed amendment to the franchise agreement with Allied Waste Services in North America for solid waste collection services and the proposed solid waste rate increase.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I'm Heather Neff, the Recycling and Waste Manager. The item before you this evening is regarding a proposed amendment to the franchise agreement with Allied Waste Services, more commonly known as Republic Services, and an accompanying proposed rate increase. The proposed amendment is needed in order to add all of the required services and programs under our obligations for SB 1383, which is the mandatory organic waste recycling legislation that was passed by the state in 2016. The legislation requires us to put in place a number of programs, including organic waste collection services, and that would include not just the green waste that's already collected, but food waste as well. An edible food recovery program, new public education and outreach programs, extensive record keeping and reporting requirements, a contamination minimization program, as well as inspection and enforcement. These requirements to apply to all generators of waste, including residents and businesses, but this evening we'll only be talking about the residential franchise agreement. All of these programs are required to be in place by January 1st of 2022. So the current franchise agreement with Republic Services does not include all of the full scope of services that are required under SB 1383. Currently, they collect green waste only. So we'll have to incorporate food waste collection and processing. So with the assistance of our consultant, HF&H, the City and Republic have been negotiating an amendment to the existing franchise agreement that would continue all existing programs, but also add in all of the required services and related programs required under SB 1383. Next slide, please. A quick recap of prior direction from council. If you recall, at the April 20th, 2020 City Council meeting, we provided you with a broad overview of SB 1383 at that time, what all the requirements were, and an estimated rate impact of between 30 to 50%. And because of that potential estimated impact, council directed staff to seek options to delay implementation of the legislation due to the financial impacts already created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Since then, we have been pursuing several avenues, but haven't had much success in achieving any sort of official delay. However, this year, Senate Bill 619 was introduced, which would delay implementation of these requirements to January 1st of an unspecified year. However, that bill has not been approved, so the original implementation date of January 1st is still applicable. So staff and Republic are proceeding with the required programs in accordance with that original implementation date to ensure that the city is not subject to any administrative fines or penalties for non-compliance. However, in the meantime, we are following this bill very closely. As of last week, it was actually pulled from committee by the author. And so we're keeping tabs on that to follow it and to see, what the progress is as we proceed. Next slide, please. So to review the franchise agreement award process, and this is per the Elk Grove Municipal Code, it's a two-step process. Upon receiving an application from the hauler for the change in service, council would review that and then adopt a resolution of intent to grant a franchise amendment and then set a date for a public hearing. Staff anticipates bringing that item forward to you for approval at the May 26, 2021 council meeting. That would set a public hearing date of June 23rd, 2021, at which time we would present the fully amended franchise agreement, as well as a proposed rate increase and schedule for council consideration and approval. The item before you this evening is an informational item that is in preparation for that award process prior to pursuing the formal noticing process for the proposed rate increase. Staff would like to provide council with an opportunity to review the proposed amendment terms and the associated rate increase, and then to direct staff to either move forward with the proposed amendment or make changes if required. However, I do have to caveat that with the majority of the amendment proposed changes are directly in response to the requirements of 1383. So we don't have a lot of flexibility in some of the proposed changes. And then finally, if we decide to go forward, we would proceed with the full public noticing process immediately following this meeting. And so formal notices would be received by our residents in like the first or second week of May. So I'll talk a little bit more about the proposed rate increase schedule, the amount, and the timing. But first, I want to turn it over to Tracy Gillard, who will go through the proposed amendment terms.
Thank you, Heather. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. The slide before you is an overview of the provisions included in the proposed franchise agreement. And let's start with the term. Republic proposed a term extension through June 30th, 2031. It's an additional 3 years beyond the current term for a total of 10 years remaining on the term if granted. The proposed term extension was found to be reasonable by city staff and its consultant to compensate for the level of investment by Republic Services to complete a comprehensive cart replacement to comply with SB 1383 cart colors and labeling. Without a term extension, carts would need to be replaced on a piecemeal basis, leading to great confusion and a lot of challenges with achieving compliance. Next up are changes to curbside collection and carts. In terms of collection, garbage will see no changes. It will remain on a weekly collection. Recycling will change just slightly. It will remain bi-weekly. However, some residents will see recycling in week A, while others will see it in week B. Green waste, however, will become organic waste. It will include yard waste and food waste, and it will change from bi-weekly to weekly. In terms of the carts, SB 1383 requires cart color standardization for all carts. Since our current cart colors vary significantly from the standardized color requirements, this will require a full swap out of all carts. That will likely lead to, for us to achieve greater compliance. Here's an example for you to consider. This is an image of the new versus current cart colors. So you can see down at the bottom of the top image where it shows the current cart colors for Elk Grove, whereas a recycle is green, recycle is green, garbage is brown, and yard waste is gray. And so in moving forward with SB 1383 cart color requirements, we will then be changing recycling to blue, organics to green, and garbage to either gray or black. And so without a full replacement, residents may end up kind of with a hodgepodge of colors. So they could end up with a green recycle, a green organics, and a gray garbage, or a green recycle, a gray organics, and a gray garbage. So it can certainly add up to a lot of confusion for our residents and pose some significant compliance issues for us. Contamination and compliance monitoring. SB 1383 requires jurisdictions to monitor carts for contamination, and this will be performed by adding 1 full-time staff member to Republic Services. Republic will be authorized to assess a $7 contamination fee, and this is to offset the cost to process the organic waste and recyclables along with the contamination in them. There will, however, be a 12-month grace period for all of 2022 for assessing contamination fees and protocols in place to minimize contamination charges. In terms of procurement, SB 1383 requires the city to purchase a certain quantity of recovered organic waste products, and this is based on population for products such as renewable natural gas, compost, and mulch. The proposed franchise agreement has included a provision designating Republic Services as the city's direct service provider, and they will administer giveaways of compost to residents and act as broker for compost and mulch products. The edible food recovery program support. The city is required to develop an edible food recovery program. The proposed franchise agreement does include a provision that will require Republic to provide support for this program by either direct funding or in-kind support in the amount of $50,000 annually to the city or to a beneficiary program or organization. There are extensive public outreach and education requirements. The city is required to develop and implement a public outreach program for organic waste recycling. The proposed amendment does include the following provisions to support the public outreach and education requirements, which includes a dedicated recycling coordinator increased from what is currently a half-time to full-time, additional outreach campaigns and booths at public events, materials required to be printed in at least 2 languages, English and Spanish, or 3 languages for service-related information, which would be in English, Spanish, and Chinese. I would like to point out that these languages are based on census data, and staff will take into account data from the 2020 census. So if those languages did change, we would know that from the 2020 census. We also have some extensive reporting requirements. SB 1383 includes extensive record keeping as well as reporting requirements. The proposed amendment does include additional strategies to assist the city in meeting these obligations. In fact, Republic has proposed to upgrade the record keeping and reporting to a web-based software. In terms of performance standards and liquidated damages, it's fairly straightforward. The proposed amendment incorporates additional standards for all new services, programs, and requirements. Now I'll turn it back over to Heather.
Thank you, Tracy. So we'll go into the rate increase proposal now. So as we mentioned, all of these requirements are required to be in place by January 1st of 2022. And the proposed amendment will achieve compliance for these requirements and the deadline. These additional services that are required that Tracy discussed will increase the cost to provide solid waste collection service in Elk Grove, which is why we have to talk about a rate increase. Next slide, please. So talking a little bit about the components of the rate, this is an overview. So the 2 primary components of our solid waste rates are the portion that goes to Republic to provide the service and the portion that the city retains to do the administrative oversight and reporting to the state and various other costs. So based on our conversations with our Republic and a review that we performed with our consultants, the city, Republic, and our consultant have determined that an increase of 26.5% would be appropriate and reasonable to fund all of the new required services. The city's portion of that fee, currently $5.38 per household per month, is not proposed to change. Based on staff projections, we feel confident that our current fund balance, as well as projected growth, will be sufficient to fund all of our additional increases associated with SB 1383. One additional unique change that also impacts the total overall rate adjustment is that we discussed and worked out with Republic to decrease the franchise fee that they pay from 10% to 8%. Because rates are increasing, this decrease actually will maintain the city's current level of franchise fee revenue, but will mitigate a little bit of the rate increase to residents. So the overall impact will be an average increase of about 22%. 22% is still a fairly sizable increase. So we have also worked out with Republic a implementation schedule that will take place in 3 steps to mitigate that increase to the extent feasible. So as shown on this table, this shows the 3 separate steps. The first one would take place if approved on July 1st of this year. The second step increase would be 6 months later on January 1st of 2022. And then the third and final step, along with an annual inflationary increase, would take place on July 1st of 2022, so next July. The majority of residents have 64-gallon service, about 85% of our residents. So the average increase to most folks will be about $6.28 or 22% over that 1-year 3-step process. And I do want to point out and remind, since this is statewide legislation, this type of rate increase is not unique to Elk Grove. This is happening statewide. I think the majority of cities are working on implementing these programs and the associated cost increases. So to give you an idea of what that looks like on a regional basis, we've prepared this comparison chart. We have included similar charts to this in the past when we've done rate increases, but this one is a little bit different because this legislation has such comprehensive requirements. Most cities are still working through putting their programs in place, mapping out what those programs look like, and determining the cost for those. So a lot of cities haven't finalized their rate increases yet. So a lot of these numbers are either proposed or estimated, and those ones are shown in the lighter colored blue, while Elk Grove's proposed 3-step increase is shown by the 3 bars in green. I do want to sort of highlight a couple of these cities to sort of give you an idea of how all of this is very much up in the air. Citrus Heights at the beginning of the chart, and then you see Rancho Cordova kind of towards the middle. Those are the other 2 cities in our region that are also served by Republic Services. They have not completed their franchise amendment agreements or proposals yet. So those numbers are ballpark. They probably will change, but we don't know by how much, but this is what is estimated at currently. And then another one I would like to point out, if you see the County of Sacramento just to the right of Elk Grove, our proposed rates, the county approved 2-step increases of $5 each for a total of $10. The rate that's shown here will be effective January 1st of 2022. County staff has indicated to us, though, that even with those 2 increases, the rate shown here doesn't cover their current cost to provide service. They're in the process of doing a cost of service study to determine what rate would ensure full cost recovery. And then on top of that would be the increased costs associated with SB 1383 programs. So county staff has indicated that they fully expect that the rate shown here will likely be higher by the time they're done with their analysis. On the other end of the spectrum, the cities of Stockton and Davis for sure have completed their SB 1383 planning and have included the costs in their rates. So it kind of gives you a perspective of, most cities are sort of all in different aspects of putting their programs in place. And so I would like to be able to give you exact numbers so that we can compare what our proposal is with everybody else. But unfortunately, the data is not fully there yet. But I think that this chart still provides you with a good overview of where we're at on a regional basis. And I think that the key takeaway is that with our 3-step increase, even with the last one in place, Elk Grove is still likely to be under the projected average for the region. Next slide, please. So that three-step increase, we've negotiated that with Republic, as I mentioned, to sort of lessen the impact. However, they're all alternatives. If council would like, we could consider different rate increase strategies and different increments. We could postpone it 6 months and push those 3 steps back starting January 1st. We could also look at postponing it, lessening the number of incremental increases from 3 to 2, or we could forego incremental steps and do a lump sum increase on January 1st, 2022, which is when the services actually kick off. However, staff is not recommending these alternatives. We're recommending the 3-step increase beginning on July 1st. And that's primarily because in our discussions with Republic, the rate increases are very much contingent and dependent upon the investment that it needs to go into buying the new trucks to provide the service, the new carts, as well as infrastructure to process the food waste that will be collected. So if in the event that council would like to consider one of these, it's certainly a possibility, but it would probably result in us needing to go back and have additional discussions with Republic. Next slide, please. So to conclude our recommendation, as we mentioned, this is primarily an informational item. However, we would ask that council direct staff to proceed with drafting an amended franchise agreement based upon the proposed terms that Tracy presented to you. Also to proceed with the formal public noticing process for the proposed rate increase using this 3-step increment schedule that would go every 6 months starting on July 1st of this year. And then finally direct staff to present the complete amended franchise agreement and proposed rate schedule for approval at a public hearing on June 23rd. That concludes our presentation. We would be happy to answer any questions if you have them. We also have representatives from our consultant as well as Republic Services should you have any questions for them.
Thank you both. I will now open up the public comment opportunity.
And no written comments were received for item 10.5, but we do have a member of the public who's put up a hand to speak. If I could ask staff to take down their share screen of the presentation item, that would be appreciated so that then the speaker timer can go up.
Sharon Anderson, you may unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, council members and everybody who's listening in. Just want to say thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak. This is very short. In noticing your analysis of the 32-gallon, 64-gallon, and 96-gallon container pricing, if we're really good at what we do, everybody's going to want to move to the 32-gallon trash bin. If you think about it, what we're trying to do is keep a lot of organic materials out of the landfill. So that means pizza boxes that are soiled get to go in the green waste bin or the yard waste bin or the organics bin. So if we're really good, everyone should be headed to that 32-gallon bin, right? So have we taken that into consideration? It's the same thing that SMUD went through when everybody went solar, is that they realized that they still had an infrastructure to pay for. I'm not speaking out of, I just was thinking about SMUD and our driving down the amount of garbage that we throw out in the garbage cans. So, if you're thinking about maintaining our infrastructure, think about what SMUD went through with solar and that everybody had to pay like this basic fee or a hookup fee. So I don't know if you've done that analysis already anticipating that people are going to be moving to smaller can sizes, which means less revenue. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Anderson. Any others? Any other public comments?
And I do not see any other hands raised for item 10.5. That would conclude public comment for item 10.5.
Okay, then I'll close the public comment opportunity, open it up for council. Let's start with Council Member Sun.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would thank Heather and staff, Tracy and staff for the presentation and information. This is a state mandate, and we need to prepare for implementation. And since we don't know for sure when that will be, we got to start moving for fear of missing our deadline. So I'm in support of staff's recommendation to do in the 3 phases and move forward. Hopefully it'll result in what Ms. Anderson talked about, which, not necessarily less revenue, but perhaps, we're just being able to compost more. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Spies.
Yes, thanks. So I'm supportive of staff's recommendation. The one thing that I would ask that we think about doing is to be crystal clear to our ratepayers, particularly why these rates are going up, particularly in terms of Senate Bill 1383. Some may think it's great, some may not think it's great, but one way or the other, I think they should know that these costs are spurned by state guidelines, and this is the reality of it. So I'm supportive of staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councilmember Spies. Councilmember Hume.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank Heather and Tracy and our staff for negotiating on behalf of not only the organization, but also our residents in trying to do what was mentioned of meet these state guidelines. This is not something we're choosing to do or that we're implementing with great aplomb. It's being forced on us, and we're figuring out how to make it work. And I'd also like to thank the Republic representatives. It was kind of glossed over, but part of this rate increase includes them throwing in, I believe the number they mentioned to me was $7 million for the cost of those new carts, so that everybody's cart colors will be uniform, not only here, but the goal is that eventually statewide, no matter where you go, where you live, this color for this type, this color for this type, and that color for that type. So I appreciate all of that. And while I don't enjoy doing this, and I agree with the comments from Councilmember Spies that the public education and outreach component of this is going to be so crucial, so that people understand the why behind what we're doing. The one thing that I would like to make sure that we're sure that's how we want to do it, and I appreciate the comments relative to the implications of doing it differently, is that 3-step process, because I worry that if every 6 months the rate goes up, then it seems like we're continually raising their rates, right? It's all one raise doled out over 3 increments, but I can just anticipate the complaints of how come you raised my rates again? Well, no, we're raising them one time, but we're doing it. So I'm not sure I'm sold on that, and I'll tell you, I said under council comments about the sanitation district being able to hold the rates lower than the projected amount of what we had authorized staff to do. And part of that was because we did make an aggressive raise at the front end, and we're able to capture some time value of money that helped the overall financial position. So I'm not necessarily suggesting this, but I would just be interested if there's any comment or will, or whether or not we think there's a benefit to ripping the Band-Aid off more quickly, so to speak. Like I say, I can just anticipate the perception being is that this is several rate increases rather than just one doled out over time. Other than that, I support the direction.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor Nguyen.
I echo Councilmember Hume's comments. I had an opportunity to talk to a rep from Republic Services about this, and by the way, they said great things about Heather and Tracy as well too, and your negotiation, and that you were the best and all across the region. So thank you so much for making it easy. You know, every time we discuss any rate increase, we do it ahead of time, and then we bring it back and we discuss it in public, and it's like people are hearing it for the first time again, right? Even though they've heard about it before and that it's going to happen. And as Councilmember Spies mentioned, this is a state mandate, right? Councilmember Spies and Councilmember Suen. And so it's not something that we just put together and decided we're going to do this, but it is state mandated. And it's just in the way in which we're going to go about doing this. I agree with Councilmember Hume that maybe we, rather than ease into it, because we're going to have to explain it again every single time, right? And rather than having to explain it again over and over again, maybe it's best to just do it all at once. But, you know, I just think we got to do what's best for our community. And maybe that's where we make sure that we get public input and see what our community wants as well, too. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent points. Much along the same school of thought as Councilmember Spies, that education component is so critical to really understand what SB 1383 is all about. Most people don't follow legislation at all. I do, because that's what I do for a living, but most people aren't looking at what does that actually mean for me. And nobody likes rate increases, but the compliance to Senate Bill 1383 is obviously critical. But within that, I appreciate what Councilmember Hume mentioned about essentially ripping the Band-Aid at one time, because there could conceivably be this, you know, this perception of constant increases, and does it actually, when will it stop? And so having to start that process of outreach and education might be cumbersome. So I would certainly be open to doing it one time, but I would not be in support of doing it at one time as we start to reopen California, as we're still during the middle of a pandemic. I'm still kind of mindful of making sure that our struggling families don't get an additional hit. When we look at it in terms of dollars, it may not seem so high, but 22% increase as a mindset is a lot. So I'm just, you know, being mindful of how it will be received. So critical to that is the educational component, because within Senate Bill 1383 on how waste is separated, there are penalties associated with that. And so we need to make sure that teaching how to separate waste and the compliance for that, because I believe there's a grace period that would be allowed, if I'm not mistaken, of like a year or something. I don't have those, but I remember seeing something about a grace period. But we don't want to create undue harm and increase burden because they didn't separate their waste properly. So it is really imperative to do that educational outreach on how to dispose of waste correctly and be in compliance. So we're going to need all hands on deck, all of our partners, to truly go out there and educate with the citizen, with all of our other additional media outlets, to educate the community, not only to comply, but then how also not to be penalized and accrue additional penalties. That would just be horrific. But I do appreciate Republic Services stepping up and making sure that, you know, we will have access to these brand new carts so that there'll be clearer understanding of how all of this works. And at the end of the day, this is something we must do as in compliance with Senate Bill 1383. But it's going to require a lifestyle change. Not everybody recycles, composts, and separates their waste. So there's a lot of education that's going to be required. And I do appreciate Republic Services' commitment to making sure that there's a robust outreach program in outreach to our community. That is important. I also, there are some benefits that there will be weekly pickup of yard waste instead of the bi-weekly pickup. So there are some benefits that will come to this, in addition to protecting our environment and all of those things. But when you're asking for a lifestyle shift and compliance from an entire community, the key to that success or failure is outreach. So that's where I'm going to be really interested to see how we roll that out and truly making sure that our citizens are educated on this, particularly really the compliance, so that they're not getting additional penalties. I'm open in terms of whether it's a three-pronged approach or whether we do it at one time. I see the benefits, the pros and cons for both. So I'm definitely open to discussion as we get farther along in this to see if there are options that really best meet the needs of our community. I think you've gotten some pretty good feedback from all of us. There's some unifying themes from pretty much everyone. Yeah, Councilmember Suen, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. Hearing my colleagues' comments, I'm of the same mindset as yourself about considering both avenues. And so I want to ask Heather if we did. I looked at your chart again. So you had an effective date under the 3 raised approach, effective date of July 2022. So if we were to do the full vote at July 2022, but to Councilmember Speace's point, let's do the noticing 6 months in advance. So for every month for the, starting January 2022, your bill is going to go up by $6 or 22% or whatever. For the next 6 months, we're noticing people of that and preparing them and enabling them to, whether it's savings or reallocating or refiguring their budgets for that 6 month. Does that sound feasible, Heather?
We would most likely have to go back and discuss that with Republic, because part of the timing of the 3 steps was contingent on getting that cart swap early in the process. Because of any new carts that are deployed after that January 1st date have to be compliant. And so the plan was to do the cart swap fairly early in 2022. And so, as I mentioned, the timing for that was sort of contingent on that. And so we can certainly we'll go back and talk with Republic about what some alternative schedules might look like. I'm not sure that we'll be able to delay it all the way to the July 1st, 2022 date, because of their need to invest in the equipment to start doing the service on January 1st of 2022. But when we bring this back for approval at the public hearing date in June, we'll have a couple of options in terms of what that rate schedule would look like, whether it's a step or a single increase.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so that's fine. And I just want to take the moment to recognize and thank Republic Services too. I think we couldn't ask for a better partner to go through this with. So thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you. And yes, I agree. Thank you to Republic Services. They reached out and answered any questions that I would have had. And I'm pretty sure that they did that with my council colleagues as well. So it's comforting knowing that we have a good partner, and their commitment to the outreach and education component is definitely critical. So I appreciate having a partner that we can trust in rolling this out. Thank you. Do you need anything further from us?
I think that's it. We have a direction. Thank you so much.
All right, very good. All right, next item is adjournment, I believe. I don't think we skipped over anything. This is our last item.
Yay, we didn't have to use 10 o'clock rule.
All right, yeah, we're 2 minutes under. So with that, I will adjourn here. It's 9:58. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Mayor.
Have a safe
Night
evening.
all.
Thank you.